Hello guys, this is your friend and we are back with a new fanfic. Which is what if Naruto was reborn as Bardock's son and became the strongest Saiyan on Earth? Part 2. And if you enjoy this fanfic then please press the like button and subscribe to my channel for more fanfic like this. And now let's start the fanfic. The next day, the sun rose lazily over the horizon, casting a warm, golden glow across the peaceful village. Morning brought a sense of bliss for the new couple, who had spent the night wrapped in each other's arms, savoring every touch and the warmth of their embrace. Though it was their first time in a relationship, everything felt so natural, as if they had been together for years. There was a comfort in each other's presence, a connection neither of them could fully explain, but neither questioned. As the villagers gathered to bid them farewell, Naruto and Bulma stood side by side, their hands casually intertwined, exchanging smiles and soft glances. After a few heartfelt goodbyes and promises to visit again, they were off, continuing their journey in search of the sixth Dragon Ball. Heading southwest, they soon found themselves speeding down a wide river in a speedboat. The air was fresh, and the wind pushed Bulma's blue hair back as she drove, looking more beautiful than usual. Naruto couldn't take his eyes off her. The soft breeze, the way her hair moved, it all made her even more pretty. He sat beside her, leaning back comfortably, enjoying both the scenery and the girl beside him. It was a good idea to travel down this river, Bulma said, glancing at Naruto with a playful smile. We'll cover a lot more ground this way. Only 2 Dragon Balls left, and we'll have all of them sooner than I thought. Her excitement was contagious, making Naruto chuckle. That's cool, Naruto replied, showing the same excitement as her. But then his gaze shifted to Oolong, who sat nearby with a slightly confused look. But why are we bringing Oolong along again? Oolong, hearing his name, turned to the couple with a cheeky grin. That's what I'd like to know. But maybe, she's got a thing for me, he teased, winking at Bulma, though the nervousness in his tone was still there. He wasn't quite over how powerful Naruto was, but he couldn't deny that Bulma was beautiful. Naruto raised an eyebrow, leaning closer to Bulma, his hand casually slipping around her waist, pulling her a little closer. Yeah, I don't think so, he said with a smirk, his tone teasing but possessive, as he shot Oolong a look that made the pig gulp. Bulma chuckled, her hand resting on Naruto's thigh as she steered the boat. You wish, Oolong. No, the reason you're coming along is because of your transformation ability. That power of yours might come in handy at some point, and I'd rather have you with us than wander off. She leaned in a little closer to Naruto, her lips brushing his ear. Naruto grinned at her words, his hand moving lower along her waist, his fingers tracing lightly along her hip. The closeness, the way she whispered to him, it sent a thrill through him. Even in this casual setting, with Oolong nearby, there was a spark of intimacy between them. Oolong, not oblivious to the tension building between them, rolled his eyes. Count me out of any more of this lovey-dovey stuff. This journey is a real pain in the butt, he muttered, then, with a huff, added, and wait, are you saying I'm not your type? Exactly, Bulma replied without missing a beat, her voice dripping with amusement. I already have a boyfriend. She glanced at Naruto, who was watching her with an almost predatory smirk, his hand moving a little lower down her, teasing the edge of her panties. Oolong turned to Naruto. Naruto met his gaze with a smug grin, his arm still wrapped around Bulma, who leaned into him slightly. Better luck next time, Oolong, Naruto teased, his hand now lightly squeezing Bulma's doughy, hidden from the pig's view. Bulma couldn't help but let out a soft moan, enjoying Naruto's touch and the playful banter. She leaned into him a little more. Looks like you're stuck with us, Oolong, she said, her voice light but with a hint of flirtation that only Naruto seemed to catch. We sure have come a long way. Aren't we there yet? Naruto asked, feeling a little bored as he looked out over the river. The scenery was beautiful, lush trees on either side, the water sparkling in the sunlight, but after hours of travel, even the most peaceful sights could grow dull. How much further, Bulma? He asked again, turning his head toward her. Bulma, her hair flowing behind her as she manned the boat, let out a small sigh. We still have a long way to go. I'd say, about 3 more days. She pulled out a map from her bag, glancing over it. This map should tell us exactly, though. Oolong, who had been quietly sulking, suddenly spoke up out of curiosity. Say, where are you guys even trying to go, anyway? Bulma looked up from her map, her finger tracing the path. Let's see. Somewhere around Mt. Fripen. Oolong's face paled instantly, and his eyes widened in horror. What? Mount Fripen. Are you crazy? You're planning to go there? His voice trembled as sweat rolled down his forehead. He shook his head. There's no way I'm going there. I'm out. Naruto raised an eyebrow at the pig's sudden panic. What's so scary about that mountain? He couldn't help but wonder what had Oolong so worked up about. Oolong, trembling, looked at Naruto like he was a fool. You've never heard of it. The terrifying Ox King lives there. That place is always on fire. Do you understand now? Oolong's voice was urgent, desperate even. Ox King, Naruto thought to himself, the name tickling the back of his memory. That sounds familiar. Where have I heard that before? Bulma, however, seemed completely unfazed. Relax, Oolong. Naruto is strong enough to take care of some Ox King, she said with a confident smile, casting a loving glance at Naruto. You don't know how horrible the Ox King is. He's truly terrifying, known as the King of Demons. Oolong's voice quivered as he described the monstrous figure, but his warnings fell on deaf ears. Naruto and Bulma weren't concerned in the slightest. Suddenly, the engine of the boat started sputtering, making strange noises as the boat slowed down and finally came to a complete stop in the middle of the river. Naruto and Bulma looked at each other in confusion. Bulma quickly checked the controls, her expression growing more and more worried. Oh no, it's out of gas, she exclaimed, throwing her hands up in frustration. What are we going to do now? Naruto, however, remained calm, a mischievous smile forming on his lips. I have an idea, he said, turning to Oolong with a gleam in his eyes. Looks like you're useful after all. A few minutes later, they had managed to reach the riverbank, with Oolong transformed into a paddle, much to his dismay. Once they were on solid ground, Bulma began searching through her pockets, panic quickly taking over as her hands came up empty. It's gone, Bulma gasped, her face paling. The bag with all my capsules, it's gone. Ah! Her scream echoed through the quiet landscape as she fell to her knees, clutching her head in despair. Naruto rushed over to her side, kneeling down beside her. Bulma, what's wrong? Are you okay? His voice was filled with concern as he placed a hand on her shoulder. Bulma looked up at him, her eyes wide, filled with tears. Naruto, I must have dropped the bag in the river somewhere. We're trapped in the wasteland forever, she cried, her voice trembling as panic set in further. Hey, calm down, Naruto said, trying to soothe her. He pulled her into a gentle hug, his hand rubbing her back in a slow comforting motion. We'll figure something out, just breathe, okay? How can I calm down, Naruto? We're stuck here. Bulma's voice cracked as she buried her face in his chest, clinging to him. Oolong, meanwhile, grinned smugly to himself, happy at the thought that they might be stranded for good. But Naruto wasn't about to let that happen. Bulma, Naruto said softly, pulling back just enough to look her in the eyes. Trust me, okay? I have a way to travel fast, so don't worry. Taking a deep breath, Naruto suddenly stood up and cupped his hands around his mouth. Ni I im boos sss. He yelled, his voice echoing across the land. Bulma blinked in confusion, standing up slowly. What are you doing? She asked, not entirely sure what was going on. Before she could say anything more, a bright yellow cloud zoomed toward them from the sky, coming to a stop right in front of Naruto. Both Bulma and Oolong's eyes widened in shock. What the hell is that? Bulma pointed at the cloud, her mouth slightly agape. Naruto grinned, patting the cloud like it was an old friend. Bulma, meet Nimbus. He's a magical cloud. We can use him to travel fast, way faster than walking or using the boat. With that, Naruto jumped onto the cloud, effortlessly sitting on it. See, it's perfect. We can fly to our destination. Bulma stared at him, her mouth hanging open in disbelief. Wait. You've had a magical cloud this whole time, and you didn't tell me. She exclaimed, her hands on her hips, her eyes narrowed at him. Naruto chuckled, giving her a sheepish smile. I just wanted to ride with you on the motorcycle. You know, spend time together, he admitted, scratching the back of his head. Bulma couldn't help but soften at his words. Naruto laughed, reaching out his hand to her. Come on, let's go. Okay, but I have more questions, and I want answers, Bulma said, her voice taking on a bossy tone as she crossed her arms. She looked at Nimbus, then back at Naruto, her brow furrowed in concern. Hey, where am I supposed to sit? There's barely enough space for the two of us up here. Naruto, grinning slyly, leaned back on the cloud, his eyes glinting with mischief. Don't worry, Bulma, he said smoothly. You can sit on my lap. Bulma's cheeks flushed a deep red at the suggestion. As she turned around and slowly lowered herself onto his lap, she bit her lip, feeling Naruto's strong hands guiding her hips. When she finally sat down, juicy fat doughy slammed down on his groin. Doughy flesh flattening and spilling all over his crotch with a muffled clap made Naruto's breath hitch. His, already starting to stir from their closeness, was suddenly trapped against her thick, pillowy. Whoa! Naruto let out a half-choked yelp of surprise, his grip on her waist tightening instinctively as the warmth of her body flooded through him. The feeling of her settling down with a soft clap against his crotch made his head spin. He swallowed hard, trying to keep his cool, but the sensation of her softness was too much to ignore. Sorry, Bulma whispered, turning her head slightly, her voice barely audible. She shifted, trying to adjust her position, but all it did was make things worse. She wiggled, her fat bubble butt rubbing itself against his groin in a decidedly lewd fashion. Something about the innocent way she had reacted turned him on. It was like a lap dance. Naruto's was hard against her fat bubble butt. Bulma could feel it. Naruto wrapped his arms around her waist tightly, bringing her closer to his chest. Bulma rested her head on his chest. Bulma, Naruto groaned. He was practically trembling with desire, but the innocent way she nestled against him made it even more intense. What about me? Oolong's voice cut through the moment, completely oblivious to the rising tension between the two. The sun was blazing mercilessly as Naruto, Bulma, and Oolong pressed on through the vast desert on the Nimbus cloud. Even Nimbus seemed to be sluggish in the unforgiving heat, hovering lower to the ground in search of any shade it could find. Oolong, having transformed into an umbrella, hovered above Bulma's head, doing his best to shield her from the scorching sun. Not that he had any choice. I'm dying. Oolong whined, his voice strained as he tried to maintain his transformation. I'm losing all my strength. It's too hot. His exaggerated complaint was further backed by his panting. The umbrella sagged as Oolong was visibly struggling. Where even are we? It's all desert out here. Bulma sighed, wiping sweat from her forehead. Her wet sweaty hair stuck to her face as the sun's heat fell down on her. We don't have a choice, Oolong. This is the only way to MT. Fripen, she explained, eyes narrowing at the horizon. Even with her genius intellect, this part of the journey was a grind, and the heat was getting to her too. Naruto frowned as he looked at Oolong's drooping form. Maybe we should take a break somewhere before Oolong turns into a roasted pig, he suggested, glancing down at the dry, cracked ground below them. Bulma, relieved by the idea, scanned the landscape. You're right, Naruto, she said, her voice a little breathless from the heat. Look, over there, she pointed to a large, rocky boulder jutting out of the desert, casting a decent-sized shadow beneath it. That should give us some shelter. Nimbus gently descended, and as soon as they landed near the boulder, everyone hurried into the shade. Oolong returned to his normal form, collapsing dramatically onto the ground, gasping for air. Ah, sweet, cool shade, finally, he groaned, wiping his face. Naruto stretched his arms, looking around at the seemingly endless desert. His eyes then settled on Bulma, who was sitting down, fanning herself with her hand. Despite the rough conditions, she still managed to look as beautiful as ever, her blue hair clinging to her damp skin. He grinned a little, sitting beside her. You holding up okay, Bulma? Bulma smiled faintly, leaning into him. Yeah, just exhausted from the heat. Thanks for the break, Naruto. You're always looking out for me. She rested her head on his shoulder for a moment, and Naruto felt a warmth in his chest. Meanwhile, unbeknownst to them, a pair of binoculars were locked on their small group from a nearby rocky outcrop. A mischievous smile curled across the lips of a small blue, cat-like creature watching from afar. Victims, the feline creature murmured in a soft, female voice. She quickly scurried off toward a hidden hideout nearby, her excitement bubbling over. Yamcha, Yamcha, I found some sitting ducks ripe for the taking. Inside the hideout, a young man with long black hair, rugged bangs framing his sharp features, and a martial artist's build was seated, casually eating a bowl of food. His ears twitched at the sound of his partner's voice. What is it, Puar? He asked, looking up from his meal. Puar, panting from the excitement of her discovery, bounced in front of him. I spotted a group not far from here. They look like they've been traveling for a while. Easy pickings. Yamcha stood up. A wicked grin spread across his face as he stretched, cracking his knuckles. It's been too long since we've had some fresh prey. Sounds like it's about time for some fun. He hadn't had a decent score in a while, and from the sound of it, these travelers didn't seem like they'd put up much of a fight. Come on, Puar, let's see what we can get out of them. Yamcha slung a leather strap over his shoulder, adjusting his martial arts outfit. He walked outside, and Puar followed close behind with excitement. As they reached his parked desert hoverbike, Yamcha hopped on, revving the engine. The sound of the bike roared through the quiet desert. Puar leapt onto the back, clutching his waist tightly. This should be a good haul, Yamcha muttered as he kicked up dust and started speeding toward Naruto, Bulma, and Oolong's location. Bulma fell asleep peacefully in the shade of the boulder, the cruel desert heat finally giving way to the cool breeze of the late afternoon. Naruto and Oolong kept watch. Oolong's stomach growled, breaking the silence. Man, I'm starving, Oolong groaned, clutching his gut as he glanced at Naruto. Don't you have any food? We've been out here forever. Naruto opened his mouth to reply, but something on the horizon caught his eye. A faint cloud of dust was rising in the distance, getting closer fast. His instincts kicked in immediately. Oolong, Naruto said quietly, his eyes narrowing as he focused on the oncoming dust cloud. You might want to wake Bulma up and get her out of sight. Huh, Oolong blinked, confused. Why, what's... Naruto just pointed toward the rapidly approaching vehicle. Oolong turned to look and froze, his eyes widening in alarm as he realized what Naruto had noticed. A vehicle was speeding straight toward them. Oolong panicked. Naruto, what do we do? Oolong stuttered, but before they could act, it was too late. The vehicle came to a halt nearby, and a man hopped off, his long black hair swaying as he moved. I am Yamcha, the newcomer said, his voice filled with smug confidence. He sized them up with a smirk, hands resting on his hips. Master of this desert, and you're trespassing on my land. Behind him, the blue cat-like creature from earlier, Puar, floated down beside him. She grinned wickedly. And it's my land too, she added, her voice high-pitched and playful. But Oolong's eyes went wide as he recognized her. Puar, is that you? Oolong blurted out, pointing at the floating cat with a mixture of surprise and dread. We went to the shapeshifting academy together. Puar scowled, her expression darkening. Oh, I remember you, all right. She hissed. You used to bully me, steal my lunch money, and pick on me because I was smaller. You were an awful pig. Yamcha chuckled, his eyes looked at both Puar and Oolong. Looks like the tables have turned, huh, pig? Yamcha said, his tone dripping with amusement. How does it feel to be the one facing someone bigger now? Oolong backed up quickly, retreating to Naruto's side as his bravado melted away. Naruto, are you sure you can handle this guy? He whispered, trembling. He looks really strong. Puar smirked at Oolong's fear. Just like the old days. Still hiding behind someone else when you're scared. Naruto stepped forward, placing himself between Oolong and the bandits. His voice was calm but firm. That's enough, Naruto said, his tone leaving no room for argument. You might think you're tough, ganging up on Oolong, but you're forgetting I'm still here. Yamcha laughed dismissively, waving his hand as if brushing off Naruto's presence. Kid, you don't know who you're dealing with, he said, his tone turning more serious. I will give you a chance. Hand over your money and capsules, or I'll take them by force. Naruto didn't flinch. He simply stared at Yamcha, his eyes locked on the bandit's movements, reading him like an open book. I admire your guts, Yamcha said, his voice almost respectful. But that respect was short-lived as he tossed aside his scabbard and charged at Naruto with his sword drawn. But you're about to regret it. With a loud battle cry, Yamcha lunged forward, aiming his blade directly at Naruto's heart. His speed was impressive, but Naruto saw it coming. In a split second, Naruto ducked under the sword and delivered a swift, powerful kick to Yamcha's jaw. The impact was brutal. Yamcha's head snapped back, and his body flew through the air, crashing into a nearby boulder with a nasty thud. Dust and rocks flew everywhere as Yamcha collapsed to the ground. Yamcha! Puar screamed in panic, flying to her partner's side. She transformed into a mirror, hovering in front of Yamcha's face as he struggled to get back on his feet. Oh no, Yamcha, look at your face, she squeaked. Yamcha groaned in pain, rubbing his aching jaw. He glanced into the mirror and gasped in horror. His face was swollen, and one of his teeth was missing. Ah! He screamed, clutching his face. My tooth! My face! You knocked out my tooth! What have you done to my manly face? Naruto stood calmly, his eyes still fixed on the bandit, unimpressed. I warned you, he said simply. Yamcha glared at Naruto, his anger flaring, but the pain and humiliation were too much. You'll pay for this, kid, Yamcha shouted as he and Puar scrambled back to their desert bike. I'll be back, and next time, you won't be so lucky. With that, Yamcha revved up the engine and sped off into the distance, his cries of frustration and Puar's worried squeaks fading into the desert wind. As the dust settled, Oolong peeked out from behind Naruto, still trembling. Wow, you really showed them, Naruto. Naruto smirked, shrugging. It wasn't that big of a deal. Bulma, having woken up from all the commotion, stretched lazily and yawned. What happened? she asked groggily, completely unaware of the little chaotic encounter that had just unfolded. Naruto chuckled softly. Nothing much, just dealt with some desert trash. Bulma kissed Naruto on the cheek. Good job, Naruto. Hey guys, look what I found. Oolong's voice got their attention. Both Naruto and Bulma turned to see the pig gleefully holding up a capsule. It's a mobile home capsule. Those bandits must have dropped it. Naruto chuckled, impressed. Good find, Oolong. Nice job. Bulma chimed in with a smile, her tiredness lifting. Oolong tossed the capsule into the open space, and with a puff of smoke, a large, two-story mobile home appeared. The trio entered, amazed at the luxury inside, spacious living quarters, comfortable bedrooms, and, most importantly, a kitchen stocked with food and water. Their stomachs growled in unison. I'll cook something up, Oolong offered, heading straight for the kitchen. Bulma ran her fingers through her blue hair with a groan. Ugh, my hair is a mess from that desert wind. I need a bath badly. She headed upstairs, eager to freshen up. Once inside the bathroom, Bulma looked around, slightly disappointed by its size. This is tiny, only room for a shower, she muttered, already undressing. Just as she was about to turn on the water, the door opened behind her. Naruto. She turned, surprised to see him standing there, his eyes filled with desire. What are you doing? Naruto leaned against the doorway, a playful smirk on his lips. I was thinking, since we've got limited water and all, why not share a shower? Save resources. Plus, I can give you a massage while we're in here, he suggested, his voice low, almost teasing. Bulma blinked, her heart pounding in her chest. The boldness of his offer both shocked and excited her. Is he serious? She thought. Her body heats up. Well, why not? Why yeah, sure, Bulma mumbled, barely able to get the words out, her voice breathy with nerves and excitement. Naruto's eyes darkened as a smile spread across his face. Slowly, he began to take off his clothes, his gaze never leaving Bulma. She followed suit, her hands trembling slightly as she stripped down, feeling Naruto's eyes drinking in every inch of her. When she was finally fully, Naruto couldn't help but stare, mesmerized by her beauty. Bulma stood before him, her perfect curves on full display. Her silky blue hair flowed down smoothly to her back. Her eyes, a unique color of blue, were the most beautiful eyes he had ever seen. Her cheeks were now blushing, something Naruto found really cute. Her breasts were ample, her waist the perfect hourglass shape that many girls would envy. Her hips were broad, and her womanhood was nicely shaped and shaved. Naruto's eyes continued down her creamy legs until they reached her cute little toes. Every part of her made Naruto's blood boil with desire. God, you're beautiful, he whispered, his voice husky with lust. Bulma blushed under his gaze, her heart racing as she admired him in return. Naruto's muscular body was lean yet powerful, and the water running over his toned chest only made him look more irresistible. Her eyes went lower until her gaze fell on his semi-hard large. My God, she swallowed. His black eyes were so dark, filled with desire, and his normally spiky, reddish-brown hair now clung to his face and neck from the steam of the shower. Naruto stepped forward, his hand gently reaching for hers. Come here, he whispered, pulling her closer. His hands roamed her body, sliding down to her soft fat, squeezing it firmly, giving it a gentle massage. So soft, he muttered, squeezing her flesh even more, and Bulma let out a small gasp. Naruto, she moaned as he kneaded her, his touch making her tremble with need. Naruto pressed his lips against hers as they kissed under the shower. He broke the kiss and gazed at her with eyes filled with desire. Let me make you feel good, Naruto growled into her ear, his lips brushing against her skin, sending shivers down her spine. Bulma blushed and buried her head against his muscular chest. The trio continued their journey toward Mt. Fripen, the desert stretching endlessly before them. Oolong was driving. Naruto sat by the window, trying to distract himself from the rising hard on between his legs. Bulma, sitting comfortably on his lap, was applying light makeup in the rearview mirror. She had been forced to wear a skimpy, skin-tight bunny outfit, the only clean option she had, thanks to Oolong not washing her clothes. Naruto's pulse quickened as Bulma shifted slightly, her fat round grinding teasingly against his hard. He clenched his fists, his eyes narrowing. She's doing this on purpose, he thought, biting the inside of his cheek to maintain some control. Through the reflection in the mirror, Bulma's eyes met his, a mischievous smirk playing on her lips as she reveled in the power she held over him. Once her makeup was finished, she casually put her kit away and turned to face him, her expression innocent, her voice dripping with false concern. "Are you okay, baby? You look tense." Her tone was playful, as if she hadn't been tormenting him for the past half hour with her sultry movements. Naruto's patience snapped. He wrapped his arm around her waist and pulled her against him, his lips brushing against her ear as he growled, "Don't play with fire, Bulma. You'll get burned." His voice was almost predatory. "Or have you already forgotten what happened last night?" A shiver ran down Bulma's spine at his words. Her mind flashed back to the shower, to the way he had taken control, how he had left her trembling and utterly satisfied with his fingers alone. She swallowed hard, trying to play it cool. I don't know what you're talking about," she mumbled, but her act faltered when she felt Naruto's hardening pressing firmly against her fat cheeks. Despite her words, she pushed her hips back into him, grinding her against his. Naruto's eyes darkened with lust. "Looks like I need to remind you," he whispered darkly. His hand slid up her side, cupping her full breasts through the thin material of the bunny outfit, giving it a firm squeeze. Bulma moaned softly, her breath hitching as his other hand slipped between her thighs, fingers grazing the damp fabric of her sexy bunny suit. And Naruto, stop," Bulma gasped, her hips jerking forward as his fingers rubbed against her sensitive. She squirmed in his lap, but Naruto held her firmly, his grip never loosening. "You should have thought of that before teasing me," Naruto murmured, his voice dripping with devilish intent. His fingers worked skillfully, pushing her to the brink of losing control. Bulma bit her lip to stop her moans, but it was no use. Her head fell back against his chest, her body arching as she moaned louder, unable to stop herself. Up front, Oolong's ears twitched at the sound. His brow furrowed in frustration as he gripped the steering wheel. "Can you two please knock it off back there? I'm right here, you know." The new couple paid the pig no mind, but before it could escalate further, Oolong's voice broke through. "Wait, what the?" he muttered, glancing into the side mirror. "Something's following us." His eyes widened as the shape came into focus, a green car coming toward them at high speed. "It's those bandits from yesterday." Naruto's attention shifted, his eyes narrowing as he spotted the vehicle getting closer. "Looks like they didn't learn their lesson," he muttered under his breath. A few minutes earlier, Yamcha and Puar had been tailing the trio for hours, their determination to exact revenge driving them forward. Yamcha gripped his rocket launcher tightly, a smirk tugging at the corners of his mouth. "There they are," he said. Puar nodded, speeding up to close the distance. "Are you sure about this, Yamcha?" "Trust me. This time, we're ready," Yamcha replied confidently, positioning the rocket launcher on his shoulder. His finger was over the trigger as the mobile home came into range. "Just get me close enough." Puar swerved to align their vehicle. "Steady, Yamcha," she warned, her voice tense. "I've got this," Yamcha muttered, his gaze locked on the mobile home in front of him. He took a deep breath, exhaled slowly, and fired. Naruto and Bulma leaned out the window. "What's he doing?" Bulma asked, her brows furrowed as she tried to make sense of the scene. Naruto's eyes followed Bulma's gaze. I don't know, but whatever it is, it can't be good. His voice trailed off as the man pulled the trigger, launching a massive projectile. Bulma's heart skipped a beat when she saw it. Oh no, it's a rocket, and it's heading straight for us. She shrieked, clutching Naruto's arm in sheer panic. Naruto didn't flinch. His calm demeanor surprised her. Don't worry, I've got this. Without hesitation, Naruto rolled down the window and leaned out, raising his right hand, his index finger glowing with a thin blue energy. He concentrated for a split second, then fired a small but precise ki beam at the incoming rocket. The beam hit the rocket mid-air, causing it to detonate before it could reach them. The explosion filled the sky with a fiery blast, but the mobile home remained untouched. Before the smoke could clear, Naruto fired a second beam, aiming straight at the bandits' car. The beam struck one of the tires. The bandits screamed as they spun wildly, their car skidding off the road and crashing into a large boulder. Bulma exhaled a deep breath, her body leaned against Naruto in relief. Good job, Naruto, she whispered, her heart still pounding in her chest. For a brief moment, she had thought they were done for, but as always, Naruto had been there to save her. She looked up at him, curiosity lighting up her eyes. How did you do that? She asked, her fingers lightly brushing his arm where the ki beam had come from. What was that beam thing? You've never shown me anything like that before. Naruto smiled, his eyes softening as he looked down at her. That was my ki, Bulma. It's a form of energy that all living things have, and it can be used in a lot of ways if you learn to control it. Ki, Bulma repeated, her brow furrowing. I've heard about energy manipulation in scientific terms, but this is different. Her hand was resting on his chest as if she could feel the energy pulsing within him. Tell me more, Naruto. With a grin, Naruto nodded. Ki is essentially physical energy. It's the energy that flows through every living being. With the right training, you can harness it, just like I did back there. Some use it for healing, others for combat. I've been practicing it for years. He went on to explain the basics of ki manipulation, guiding Bulma through the concept as their journey continued through the barren desert. Meanwhile, Yamcha's face was filled with frustration and disbelief as he stared at the wreckage of their car. His hands trembled slightly as he clutched his sword, his teeth grinding in anger. We underestimated them, Puar, he muttered. Puar floated next to him, her wide eyes filled with concern. That kid, he's a lot stronger than we thought, Yamcha, she said softly. Yamcha's jaw clenched. No, I underestimated him, he growled. He's not just some ordinary kid, he's powerful. Far more than I expected. His thoughts raced as he pieced together a new strategy. There was no way he would let them slip through his fingers again. His pride was on the line now. Puar hesitated, looking up at her longtime friend. So, what now? Are we just going to give up? Her voice carried a hint of uncertainty, the doubt in her eyes clear. After seeing Naruto's abilities firsthand, she wasn't so sure that they could take him on head-to-head. Yamcha's gaze hardened as he sheathed his sword. No way. We're not giving up. We're just going to change our approach. Change our approach? How? Puar asked. Yamcha's lips curled into a sly smirk. We need to catch them off guard. It's the only way we'll beat them and get our revenge. We can't rely on brute force anymore. We'll have to outsmart them. Puar frowned but nodded slowly. Okay. If you think it'll work, Yamcha. Yamcha looked back toward the distant figure of the mobile home disappearing over the horizon. His fists clenched at his sides. Oh, it will work. They won't see it coming. The next day, after their escape from Yamcha, Naruto, Bulma, and Oolong were on their way to Mt. Frippen in search of the sixth Dragon Ball. The journey has been smooth so far. Naruto leaned forward, staring at the horizon. How much longer until we get to MT? Frippen, Oolong? Naruto asked, glancing at their pig companion, who looked more nervous with each passing mile. We're almost there, Oolong replied, his voice shaky. He couldn't hide the fear creeping into his tone, his small body trembling as he pointed ahead. I really don't want to go there. Bulma noticed his anxiety and raised an eyebrow. You're still scared about that silly old legend, huh? Come on, Oolong. It's just a story. How could an entire mountain really be on fire? She chuckled, trying to dismiss the thought, but something in Oolong's demeanor unsettled her. Naruto, however, grinned confidently. Yeah, seriously, how could that even? His words were cut short as a wave of intense heat suddenly hit them all. Naruto blinked in surprise, feeling the sudden shift in the atmosphere. What the? Why is it getting so hot all of a sudden? Bulma wiped her forehead, sweat dripping down her face as the heat became unbearable. It's weird for a place this far north to be this hot. What's going on? She exclaimed, tugging at her bunny suit to get some air. Oolong, still shaking, muttered, it's because of MT. Frippen, it used to be called Chilly Mountain, but then, about 10 years ago, a fire spirit came down from the sky and set it ablaze. The whole climate changed after that. Now it's a burning wasteland. Bulma looked incredulous. A fire spirit? That sounds a bit far-fetched, don't you think? Naruto was still getting used to the sudden heat, staring at the horizon when Bulma's attention was drawn elsewhere. She gasped, pointing excitedly. Look at that sunset. Isn't it beautiful? Naruto nodded. Yeah, it's nice and all, but, wait a minute. His eyes widened in realization, and his voice took on a curious tone. That's no sunset, it's not even afternoon yet. That's not a sunset at all. Oolong screamed, his eyes wide with panic. Those are the flames from MT. Frippen, the whole mountain's on fire. Bulma's jaw dropped as she stared at the towering inferno ahead of them, the sky glowing with the red-orange light of the flames. No way, she gasped, her hand clutching Naruto's arm. I can't believe it. She turned to Naruto, hoping for reassurance, but he simply shrugged, still trying to comprehend the situation. Meanwhile, not far behind them, Yamcha and Puar were quietly tailing the trio. Yamcha, his eyes burning with determination, kept his distance as they followed along the trail. What I want, I get. That's my motto, Yamcha muttered to himself, his lips curling into a sly smile. We'll find the right moment to strike. Better ease up a little, Puar, we don't want to get spotted. Right, Yamcha, Puar responded, but her mind was filled with doubt. She slowed the car just enough to stay hidden but close enough to keep track of them. A few moments later, the trio finally reached the base of MT. Frippen. The mountain stood before them, massive and terrifying, with flames reaching for the sky. Naruto, Bulma, and Oolong all stared up in awe. The fiery peak burned brighter and hotter the closer they got, and at the top, a large, ominous castle loomed over them, standing defiantly in the flames. That's MT. Frippen, Oolong pointed out, his voice filled with fear. Bulma's eyes widened in amazement, her earlier skepticism vanishing in an instant. Wow, I've never seen anything like this before, she exclaimed, her voice filled with awe. No wonder it's so hot around here. Naruto crossed his arms, still staring up at the flaming mountain with a serious expression. I'll admit, that's impressive. But come on Oolong, let's not panic. We can handle this. Oolong, however, was far from reassured. See, this is why we should just turn back now. The Ox King is up there too, and he's bad news. Let's get out of here before it's too late. Bulma turned to him, her patience wearing thin. Lately, all you've been doing is ranting about this Ox King. Is he really that big of a deal? Oolong's face paled. He's terrifying. He's huge, strong, and ruthless. Anyone who gets close to that mountain, he chops off their head. Naruto shrugged, unimpressed. Yeah, well, we're not leaving without that Dragon Ball. It's up there, and we need it. I'm sure I can handle him if he shows up. Bulma gave a firm nod. Exactly. We've come too far to turn back now. So, Oolong, where is this Ox King? He lives at the base of the mountain, in that village over there, Oolong said, pointing towards a small settlement near the foot of Mt. Fripen. Naruto's patience was running thin. All right, enough talking. We're wasting time standing around. Let's head to the village and find that Dragon Ball already. With that, the trio started toward the village, the heat from Mt. Fripen still bearing down on them like an oppressive weight. Not far behind Naruto and his group, Yamcha and Puar continued to spy on them, intent on finding the perfect moment to strike. Yamcha grinned slyly, eyes locked on the trio ahead. We might just get to see that kid's head handed to him by the Ox King, Yamcha whispered to Puar, his tone filled with malicious excitement. Puar, flying next to him, nodded eagerly. That's true, and we won't even have to lift a finger to get our revenge, she added, relieved that they might avoid direct conflict. But their plans were suddenly interrupted by an ear-piercing scream that shattered the quiet atmosphere. Huh, what the? Yamcha spun around, eyes wide in shock, and what he saw left him speechless. Charging toward them was a massive T-Rex, its teeth bared, and in front of it was a girl, desperately running for her life. The girl's attire, however, was just very odd. She wore a skimpy blue bikini armor, pink gloves, and boots, a green cape, and a pink helmet with a sharp blade on the front. Is it just me, or is there a hot girl in a bikini running from a T-Rex? Yamcha blinked in disbelief, completely thrown off by the bizarre sight. Ah, somebody help me! The girl screamed at the top of her lungs, narrowly dodging the T-Rex's snapping jaws. In a desperate move, she spun around and ripped the blade from her helmet, hurling it at the charging dinosaur. Stay away, she shouted, her voice trembling. The blade sliced through the air and, to Yamcha's and Puar's astonishment, cleanly sliced the T-Rex's head off. The dinosaur's body collapsed with a loud crash, and the blade boomeranged back to the girl's helmet, reattaching perfectly. The girl stared at the gruesome scene, her face twisted in shock and disgust. Oh no, look what you forced me to do. Her voice shook as she took in the gruesome scene. Without missing a beat, she fired a beam from her helmet at the T-Rex's body, reducing the corpse to ashes in seconds. Yamcha and Puar stood frozen, their mouths hanging open in disbelief. I've seen a lot of things, but now I've seen everything, Yamcha muttered, his bravado utterly deflated by the display of power. Puar gulped, equally stunned. She was terrified, but she still managed to do all that. Just then, the girl's gaze locked onto them, her eyes narrowing in suspicion. Yamcha tried to salvage the situation with an awkward grin. Hi. The girl's expression hardened. It's just one bad situation after another, she shouted, firing another beam directly at them. The blast missed its mark, but it was clear she wasn't messing around. Why you? Yamcha growled, his pride bruised from Naruto couldn't take any more. He lunged at her, trying to land a punch, but she effortlessly dodged his attack. Before he could react, she delivered a swift, powerful punch to his jaw, knocking one of his teeth out. Yamcha, not again, Puar cried, rushing to his side. Yamcha clutched his mouth, groaning in pain. You'll pay for that, kid. The girl squared her stance, unafraid. Oh yeah, my daddy, the Ox King, will have your head for this. She yelled, her voice fierce. Yamcha's face went pale, and he stumbled back. What? The Ox King. Fear washed over him, and suddenly all his bravado melted away. Puar. Let's get out of here before we get killed. He screamed, turning tail and sprinting away as fast as his legs could carry him, with Puar flying close behind. The girl watched them retreat, her fierce expression fading into confusion. Huh, that's weird, she muttered, blinking at their rapidly disappearing figures. She didn't realize the weight her words carried, but the mere mention of her father had sent Yamcha and Puar fleeing for their lives. Meanwhile, Naruto, Bulma, and Oolong cautiously entered the village, a heavy silence hanging in the air. As they surveyed the desolation around them, it was clear that something terrible had occurred. The houses stood broken and abandoned, and skeletal remains littered the ground like uncanny reminders of a once thriving village. I just can't stand this heat, it's too hot here. Bulma complained, droplets of sweat rolling down her forehead. If I had known this place would be like this, I would have bought a mobile air cooler or something. Stop talking, Bulma, the Ox King might hear you, Oolong urged, scanning the desolated area nervously for any sign of the notorious giant. But Bulma, focused on herself, ignored him. She pulled out her dragon radar, and her eyes gleamed. According to the radar, it's definitely up there in the castle, she said, glancing up at the distant castle looming ominously above them. Her gaze shifted to Naruto, who was busy kicking a skeleton's head away. Hey, Naruto, can you fly up to the castle and bring back the Dragon Ball? Bulma asked, her voice hopeful. Naruto looked at the castle, then nodded enthusiastically. He called for Nimbus, and within moments, the cloud appeared, ready for action. As he climbed onto Nimbus, shot towards the burning castle. However, just as he was about to reach the castle, fiery tendrils shot up from the mountain, aiming for him. Shit, what was that? The Saiyan said in surprise. He managed to dodge the first attack, but the second hit Nimbus hard. The magical cloud shook him off, sending him tumbling into a nearby lake with a nasty splash. Naruto! Bulma shouted in alarm, her heart racing as Naruto lost his balance and fell below. Quickly swimming up, Naruto took a deep breath. He hadn't expected Nimbus to shake him off so abruptly. The fiery tendrils must have scorched the cloud. He looked up above. Nimbus! Come back! Naruto yelled from the water, watching in dismay as Nimbus fled from sight. He swam to the shore and used his ki to dry his clothes, frustration coursing through him. Suddenly, a girl came rushing toward him, her expression a mix of concern and curiosity. She was very pretty, but her daring outfit caught Naruto's eye. Is she really wearing fantasy bikini armor? The teen Saiyan thought. Standing at least as tall as Bulma, she had long, straight black hair and striking dark eyes. She had an hourglass-shaped yet toned body. The bikini hugged her curves like a second skin. Her was cupped in the front while her was being squeezed in the back by her panties, her fat doughy cheeks sticking out and her large C-cups squished up and out of the top of the bikini top. Her thick thighs even put Bulma to shame. Her bikini armor hugged her curves tightly, leaving little to the imagination. Are you okay? I saw you fall from the sky, she said, stopping just in front of him. Despite her worry, her gaze lingered on his muscular frame. A blush appeared on her cheeks seeing the hunk checking her out as she thought, maybe he came here to challenge my father for my hand in marriage. Oh, God, he is so handsome, and so dashing. Yeah, I'm fine. Who are you? Naruto managed to ask, struggling to keep his gaze off her almost body. She was as beautiful as Bulma, but unlike his girlfriend, this girl's body looked well-trained and toned despite being a little curvy. I'm Chi-Chi Kushina Ox, she replied, a shy smile forming on her lips. Hearing her full name sent a jolt through Naruto, triggering a flood of visions of a beautiful, voluptuous tomboyish woman with long red hair and purple eyes. Just like when Naruto heard Bulma's middle name, it brought back some memories he didn't know he had. I love you, Naruto. This time I will win. Naruto, love you, Naruto, echoed in his mind, creating a sense of déjà vu that left him momentarily dazed. Hey, you okay? Chi-Chi asked, her brow furrowed with concern. You looked phased for a moment. Is everything all right? Sorry about that. I felt like I knew you for some reason, Naruto admitted, shaking his head to clear his thoughts. Chi-Chi raised an eyebrow, a hint of curiosity in her eyes. That's odd. I feel kind of the same, she thought. He seems oddly familiar to her for some reason. She felt something odd inside of her, something she never felt before. What's your name? You didn't introduce yourself, she asked. I'm Naruto, he replied, still caught off guard by her presence. Say, Chi-Chi, do you live around here? Yes, I live here, she answered, raising an eyebrow at his question. Great, can you tell me how to get into that castle? Naruto pointed toward the burning castle, with urgency in his tone. I really need to get in there. Why do you want to go to my castle? Chi-Chi asked, a hint of suspicion creeping into her voice. It's your castle. I thought it belonged to the Ox King, Naruto said, slowly realizing the connection. The Ox King is my dad, Chi-Chi replied, crossing her arms under a bikini clad her breasts and puffing her chest in pride. She's his daughter. That's perfect. Maybe she can help me find the Dragon Ball, Naruto thought, relief washing over him. Before they could continue their conversation, a piercing scream echoed through the village. That's Bulma. She must be in danger, Naruto exclaimed, deciding to fly over there as soon as possible. Chi-Chi's eyes widened in surprise as she watched him take off. Wait, take me with you, she shouted. Without hesitation, Naruto scooped her up in a bridal carry, her cheeks flushing crimson as she felt his strong, muscular chest against her. Sparks of excitement ignited within her as his hands held her curves, one of his hands unintentionally cupping her breasts. Despite her embarrassment, she said nothing, lost in the moment as Naruto soared into the sky, heading toward the source of the scream. A few moments earlier, I hope Naruto is okay, Bulma said, her voice filled with worry. See, our only choice now is to leave as quickly as possible. Before we get killed, Oolong shouted, his eyes darting around nervously. He was practically vibrating with fear, convinced that danger was lurking around every corner. Suddenly, a massive axe came hurtling through the air, narrowly missing Bulma's head. She gasped, her heart racing, as a cold shiver ran down her spine. What the? Bulma exclaimed, her voice shaky. She and Oolong spun around slowly, fear gripping them as they prepared to face whoever had just attacked them. What they saw sent a shock through their bodies. A giant man loomed before them, clad in intimidating armor that gleamed ominously in the harsh light of the fire of the mountain. He had a wild, barbaric appearance, with fierce eyes that seemed to dig deep into their souls. The giant man growled menacingly, his voice deep and rumbling like thunder. What are you two doing here? He demanded, taking a step forward while gripping his axe tightly. Why, you're the Ox King, right? Bulma stammered, her knees nearly buckling as she struggled to maintain her composure. Beside her, Oolong was frozen in sheer terror, his face pale and a dark stain spreading across his pants. You didn't come here to steal my treasure, did you? The Ox King advanced, his massive frame looming over them like a dark cloud. Well, answer me. No. We were just passing by, right, Oolong? Bulma pleaded, glancing desperately at her friend for support. But Oolong was paralyzed with fear, his eyes wide and blank, utterly unable to respond. Really now? The Ox King shouted, his voice echoing like a war cry. Bulma flinched, letting out a terrified scream that pierced the air. Naruto and Chi-Chi landed in the village, where a towering figure loomed over scared Bulma. Chi-Chi gasped, her eyes widening as she recognized the figure. "That's my dad," she exclaimed. Naruto gently set her down, and Chi-Chi quickly ran to the massive man's side. "Naruto, you're back," Bulma cried, rushing over and wrapping her arms tightly around him. She clung to him in relief, her body still trembling slightly from the fear that had gripped her earlier. Meanwhile, the Ox King, seeing his daughter, knelt down and scooped her into a protective embrace. "Chi-Chi, where have you been? I've been searching everywhere," he said, his voice filled with worry. "I got chased by a T-Rex, Daddy. But don't worry, I took care of it." Chi-Chi grinned, her pride shining as she stood with her hands on her hips. "Oh, my baby girl," the Ox King said, his voice softening with affection. "You're just like your mother, so strong." He smiled, ruffling her hair gently. Leaning closer to her father, Chi-Chi whispered excitedly, "Daddy, I think that boy is here to challenge you, for my hand." Her cheeks flushed slightly as she pointed discreetly at Naruto. The Ox King's eyes gleamed with amusement as he rose to his full height, towering over Naruto. "As that's so," he bellowed. "Well then, let's see how strong he is." Naruto blinked in confusion. "You want to fight me?" he asked with a grin, stretching his limbs in preparation. With a booming laugh, the Ox King got into his battle stance. "Fight me now," he declared, holding his massive axe. Without further hesitation, he charged at Naruto, the ground shaking beneath his feet. Naruto dodged the first attack by ducking under the giant axe, retaliating with a swift kick to the Ox King's jaw. The sheer force of the blow sent the Ox King hurtling into a nearby abandoned house, shattering it on impact. The village trembled under the impact of the fallen Ox King. "Is that all you got?" Naruto teased, his eyes gleaming with excitement. The Ox King grunted as he stood up, wiping away the dust from his clothes. "Not even close," he growled, charging once again with impressive speed for his size. But Naruto was even faster. Every swing of the axe was met with nothing but air, as Naruto easily dodged each strike. With a final burst of speed, Naruto delivered a devastating punch to the Ox King's jaw, sending him crashing into the ground once more. Chi-Chi and Bulma watched in awe. Bulma's eyes were wide in admiration. "He's incredible." Panting heavily, the Ox King tried to stand but ultimately collapsed to one knee. I admit defeat," he groaned, his breath ragged. Naruto walked over, offering a hand to help the giant man to his feet. "You're pretty strong, old man," Naruto said with a grin. "That was fun," the Ox King chuckled, despite the ache in his body. "You're stronger than I thought," he admitted, taking Naruto's hand. As he rose, he looked at Naruto with a newfound respect. "What's your name, warrior?" "I'm Naruto, son of Master Roshi," Naruto replied proudly. The Ox King's eyes widened in surprise. "Roshi's son, truly." He blinked twice, then grinned as he pointed at himself. "Then you must know me. I trained under Roshi myself, alongside Gohan." "Really?" Naruto exclaimed. "I think my dad mentioned you once or twice." Oolong, standing off to the side, muttered under his breath, "That explains why he's so strong." Both the Saiyan and the giant man exchanged conversations wholeheartedly. The Ox King shared his tale of becoming Master Roshi's student, but how he couldn't continue his training due to his own lack and weakness. Naruto understood. Not everyone could go through his dad's training and master the ways of the Turtle School. The former student of Roshi then asked the Saiyan about himself, curious about when the old man had a son. Naruto laughed, understanding the confusion. His dad was over 300 years old after all. Naruto then explained that he was actually adopted by Roshi, but he didn't mention being an alien from outer space. As their conversation continued, they grew more familiar with each other. Meanwhile, Chi-Chi and Bulma looked at them in disbelief. Just a moment ago, they had been fighting, and now they were talking like old friends. Suddenly the Ox King looked at Naruto with a glimmer of hope in his eyes. Naruto, I need your help with something important. Naruto raised an eyebrow. What is it? I need Master Roshi's Basho fan. It's the only way to put out the fire on my mountain. I was going to go by myself, but I can't leave my people or my treasure unguarded. Naruto rubbed the back of his head, a little embarrassed. Sorry, but Dad lost the fan long ago. The Ox King's face fell. What? Lost it? Oh no. Then how am I supposed to put out the fire? His voice was filled with despair as he slumped down, shoulders heavy with the weight of his problem. Hey, don't worry, Naruto said, stepping forward with a confident grin. I'll put out the fire for you. But, you'll have to do something for me in return. The Ox King's eyes lit up. Anything. What do you need? Naruto gestured to the Dragon Ball hanging from the Ox King's belt. That Dragon Ball. I need it. The Ox King looked down at the Dragon Ball, then back at Naruto. He reached into his belt and pulled it out, holding it up for Naruto to see. This. If you can put out the fire, it's yours. Naruto and Bulma's eyes lit up with excitement. Deal. They said in unison, already imagining how much closer they were to completing their quest. Good. The Ox King rumbled, his spirits lifted. Let's see how you handle that fire, boy. All right, everyone, you should stand back a little, Naruto said, stepping in front of the blazing mountain. His eyes narrowed with focus as he raised his right hand, pointing it directly at the flames. Blue energy began to swirl around his arm, crackling with power as it formed into a spear-like shape in his palm. The air around him pulsed with intensity. Ha! Naruto shouted, unleashing a ki wave. The beam of blue light shot forward, slamming into the mountain with such force that it not only extinguished the fire but obliterated the entire mountain and the castle in one spectacular explosion. The ground trembled, and dust filled the air as the last remnants of the structure vanished in an instant. For a moment, everyone stood in stunned silence, mouths agape. Naruto, oblivious to the destruction, lowered his arm and smiled, it's out. Amazing. Bulma and Chi-Chi exclaimed, their eyes wide with awe at the sheer display of power. But the Ox King, still recovering from the shock, hesitated. And Naruto, he stammered, pointing toward the now flattened landscape. The fire's gone, but so is the mountain, and the castle. Naruto blinked, rubbing the back of his neck sheepishly as he looked at the destruction. Oops, guess I used too much power, he said with an awkward chuckle making everyone facepalm. Well, a deal is a deal, the Ox King said after a moment of disbelief, trying to find the silver lining. At least my treasure is safe, and the village will be able to live in peace now. With a deep breath, he reached into his belt and handed Naruto the Dragon Ball. Here's your Dragon Ball. Naruto grinned as he took it. Thanks, big guy. Hey, Bulma, look. We got the Dragon Ball. He called excitedly, waving it in the air. Bulma, still slightly in shock from the mountain's sudden disappearance, managed a smile. Yeah, great work, Naruto. Just as the relief was starting to set in, the Ox King cleared his throat, drawing everyone's attention. Now, enough talking. Naruto, are you ready to marry my daughter? He asked, his deep voice booming with happiness. What? Naruto and Bulma both shouted, their eyes wide with shock. Bulma immediately stepped forward. What are you talking about? She demanded, glaring at the Ox King. Before he could respond, Chi-Chi chimed in, her gaze fixed on Bulma. Who are you? I'm Bulma, his girlfriend, Bulma declared, crossing her arms in defiance. Chi-Chi frowned, her lips tightening. Well, too bad, because I'm going to marry him, she said confidently, her voice filled with determination. Naruto looked back and forth between the two women, utterly confused. Wait, hold on. Why should I marry you? Naruto stammered, his face flushed with embarrassment. Yeah, Bulma added, her anger rising. He never agreed to this. Chi-Chi turned to Naruto, her expression softening. Because you fought for my hand, silly, she said as if it were the most obvious thing in the world. Many men come here and challenge my father, but you're the only one who's ever defeated him. As a reward, I'm your bride. Naruto's eyes widened in disbelief. What? No way. I only fought him for fun, not to marry you, he exclaimed. Chi-Chi's face fell, her confidence crumbling as her heart broke. Tears welled up in her eyes, and she looked down at the ground. Am I not beautiful enough for you? She asked, her voice trembling, trying to hold back the tears. Naruto froze, guilt immediately washing over him. He didn't want to hurt her feelings. No, it's not that, he said quickly, his tone softening. You're really beautiful, Chi-Chi. Any guy would be lucky to have you. But, I love someone else, he added, turning to look at Bulma, his eyes filled with affection. Chi-Chi's tears slowed as she looked between Naruto and Bulma. Her heart ached, but she could see the sincerity in Naruto's eyes. Slowly, she wiped her face and forced a small smile. I see, she whispered. But, we can still be friends, right? Naruto smiled warmly, relieved that the situation hadn't escalated. Of course, we'll always be friends. Chi-Chi nodded, though her heart still felt heavy. After a few moments, she composed herself, standing tall again. Bulma let out a long sigh of relief, glad that the situation was finally resolved. As Naruto, Bulma, and Chi-Chi stood together, the air felt lighter, the tension fading away. The awkwardness remained, but at least they could move forward as friends. After the recent fiasco, Bulma checked her radar, eyes glued to the small screen. Let's see where the last Dragon Ball is. There it is. To the west, but it's pretty far though, she said, her brow furrowing slightly at the distance. All right guys, let's get going, Oolong urged, already preparing to drive their mobile house westward. They exchanged quick goodbyes with Ox King and Chi-Chi, who were both standing at the village's edge. Thanks for everything, Naruto called back with a wave. Then, turning to Chi-Chi, he added warmly, Chi-Chi, I'll come to visit you sometime, okay? His smile was genuine, and Chi-Chi's heart fluttered as she nodded in response. Goodbye, Chi-Chi shouted after them, waving energetically as the mobile house pulled away, growing smaller with each passing moment. The Ox King looked down at his daughter, noticing the sadness in her eyes as she watched Naruto leave. Don't be sad, Chi-Chi, he said, placing a comforting hand on her shoulder. You'll find another guy to marry someday, someone just as strong. But Chi-Chi shook her head fiercely. No, Daddy, she said with a determined fire in her voice. I will only marry Naruto. Don't you see, he said he wants to meet me again someday. Her eyes were wide with excitement as she looked up at her father, filled with a newfound resolve. That means he's interested in me, at least a little bit. I just need to become stronger for him. A warrior as powerful as Naruto needs a strong wife by his side. Then he won't be able to refuse me. Ox King blinked in surprise, taken aback by his daughter's intensity. Chi-Chi, honey, I'm not sure it works that way. But Chi-Chi's gaze was unwavering, filled with something much deeper than mere admiration. Daddy, you don't understand, she continued, clutching her chest as if feeling something deep inside her. It's love at first sight. I just know we're meant to be together. It's like we're two souls destined to find each other. I don't know why, but it feels like I've known him for a long time, like we're connected somehow. I'll get stronger, and one day, he'll be mine. The Ox King scratched his head, clearly confused by the depth of Chi-Chi's feelings. Well, if that's how you feel. I suppose, he mumbled, unsure of what to say. He couldn't quite wrap his head around his daughter's sudden romantic revelation. After a moment of awkward silence, the Ox King offered a tentative suggestion. If you really want to get stronger, why don't you train under my old master, Roshi? He taught me everything I know. He could help you become the kind of warrior you want to be. He is also that young man's father. Chi-Chi's eyes lit up at the suggestion. Master Roshi, she echoed, her mind already racing with possibilities. She imagined herself training hard under Naruto's father, becoming powerful enough to stand by Naruto's side. Yes, Ox King continued, now more confident in his advice. He's a huge pervert, but he's the best teacher there is. If you're serious about this, I'm sure he'd take you on as a student. Chi-Chi clenched her fists, her resolve stronger than ever. Then that's what I'll do. I'll become the strongest woman alive, and when I do, Naruto won't have any reason to turn me away. She looked up at her father with a fiery determination in her eyes. Just you wait, Daddy. I'll make him mine, no matter what. The Ox King smiled, although he still wasn't entirely sure where all of this was coming from. Still, he admired his daughter's spirit. Well, if anyone can do it, it's you, Chi-Chi. Just remember, love isn't always about strength. Chi-Chi barely heard him, too busy imagining her future, one where she and Naruto stood side by side as equals, as partners. I'll show him, Daddy, she whispered to herself. I'll show him we're meant to be. Naruto, Bulma, and Oolong made their way westward. The landscape gradually transformed into a strange mushroom forest. Towering fungi surrounded them on all sides, their enormous caps casting strange shadows over the road. Naruto, staring out the window, couldn't help but feel awe and amazement. This place is really something else, Naruto murmured, eyeing the massive mushrooms. His stomach grumbled as he considered the possibility of eating one, but he quickly dismissed the thought. Who knew if they were safe or not? Instead, he turned to look at Bulma, who was still wearing the bunny suit. She seemed completely at ease, humming a light tune while scanning the map. Hey Oolong, is there a town around here? Bulma asked, breaking the silence as she leaned over to check the radar. Oolong glanced back, gave an irritated look. How would I know? This is the first time I've been out this far, he grumbled. His eyes drifted to the fuel gauge, and his annoyance deepened as he realized it was almost empty. Great, I should have filled up at the last stop, Oolong thought, mentally kicking himself for not being more prepared. Bulma sighed, shifting her focus back to the map. Let's hope there's a town nearby. I need new clothes, and we're running low on food, she said, pulling at the fabric of her bunny suit. While she knew Naruto loved the outfit, he could hardly keep his hands off her when she wore it. But the skimpy suit was getting dirty, and she was starting to feel uncomfortable. Naruto, overhearing her, grinned. Good thing I didn't lose my bag, he said proudly, remembering the close call earlier in their journey. His casual comment drew an eye roll from Bulma, but her mind was already focused on finding a place to restock their supplies. A few minutes later, they finally arrived at a small town nestled among the mushrooms. Though it was more like a village, the locals didn't seem too concerned with the newcomers, quickly resuming their daily routines after a few curious glances. Oolong parked the mobile house in front of a gas station, eager to refuel. Fill her up, please, Oolong called out to a worker, who nodded and began pumping gas into their vehicle. Meanwhile, Naruto and Bulma stepped out, ready to do some shopping. We're gonna pick up a few things, Oolong, Naruto said as he and Bulma began walking toward the town's small marketplace. Stay here and keep an eye on the mobile home. Oolong waved them off, muttering under his breath, Yeah, don't take too long. Bulma scanned the village, her eyes landing on a small shop displaying capsules in its window. Oh, there we go, they have capsules here, she exclaimed, pulling Naruto along as they headed inside. Over 1.5 hours passed, and Oolong sat impatiently in the driver's seat, drumming his fingers against the steering wheel. What's taking them so long? He groaned, glancing at the clock for what felt like the 100th time. Just as he was about to grumble some more, Bulma and Naruto finally appeared, walking towards the mobile home. Naruto carried several shopping bags, and Bulma had changed out of her bunny suit. She now wore a gypsy-inspired outfit, her hair pulled into a ponytail. The outfit consisted of white pants with a red waistband, a gold-collared small blue jacket, gold armlets, and red sandals. She looked radiant even in a simple village girl outfit, and Naruto couldn't help but stare at her wide hips brought out by her new outfit. Finally, Oolong huffed, though his mood lightened a bit when he saw they were back. Let's get moving. With everyone back inside the mobile home, they continued their long journey toward the Diablo Desert, their next and final destination for the last Dragon Ball. Meanwhile, deep in the Diablo Desert, a massive castle loomed over the sandy plains. It belonged to none other than Emperor Pilaf, a small, blue-skinned imp who sat on his oversized throne, tapping his fingers impatiently. He wore his usual green, red, and black tunic with a frilled collar, paired with blue pants and cream shoes. His multicolored hat completed the bizarre outfit. Where are they? Pilaf grumbled to himself, growing frustrated. His minions, Shu and Mai, were late, and he had been eagerly waiting for them to return with all the Dragon Balls. His sharp ears perked up as the doors to his throne room opened, and his two loyal followers entered. A grin stretched across Pilaf's face. Finally, do you have all the Dragon Balls? He asked eagerly, leaning forward on his throne. Shu and Mai bowed before him, but Mai hesitated before speaking. And no, Emperor, she admitted, her voice cautious. Mai was a 35-years-old fairly tall woman with blue eyes and long black hair with bangs. She was wearing red eyeshadow. She has wide childbearing hips and large breasts that stretch her outfit. Her hips supported a fat doughy which could trigger an instant erection. She was wearing a teal trench coat with a red star insignia on each shoulder, a brown belt with a pistol holster attached to it from the right hip, beige slacks, and brown combat boots. Beside her was Shu, a short anthropomorphic Shiba Inu dog man with ginger or light brown fur covering his entire body, and a tan face and paws. Wearing a ninja uniform and carrying a short sword on his back. What? You dare come back empty-handed? Pilaf roared, his face turning red with anger. He clenched his fists, glaring at them. Mai, though nervous, quickly explained, we saw a trio already collecting the Dragon Balls. We followed them from a distance and watched as they gathered 6. They're headed here now to collect the 7th. When they arrive, we can ambush them and take the Dragon Balls for ourselves. Pilaf's scowl melted into a wicked grin. Ha 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 ha, excellent. I knew I could count on you, he cackled, rubbing his hands together. Soon, I'll have all 7 Dragon Balls, and I will rule the world. I'll be the emperor of everything. His voice grew louder and more maniacal with every word until the room echoed with his comical evil laughter. Shu wagged his tail happily, eager to please his master. It's all coming together, Emperor. They won't know what hit them. Ha ha ha, yes, just a little longer, and the world will bow before Emperor Pilaf. The imp threw his head back and laughed once more, the sound echoing through the castle halls as his minions exchanged glances. The countdown to their inevitable rise to power had begun. The trio had been traveling for over 2 weeks now, their nerves tingling with excitement as they neared the location of the final Dragon Ball. Their journey had been anything but straightforward. What was supposed to be a long boring path to their destination turned out to be filled with many small adventures and unforgettable moments. They explored ancient caves, delved into mysterious dungeons, and encountered bizarre places that made their heads spin with their nonsensical elements and surroundings. They met many kinds of people, experienced diverse cultures, and made many new friends. Along the way, they helped those in need, liberated villages, small towns from villains and local tyrants. Even Oolong tagged along, using his abilities in various situations that greatly helped Bulma and Naruto. His bravery even earned him a small kiss on the head from Bulma. The oddest adventure they had faced so far was their encounter with the strange alien rabbit people from a distant planet called Carrots. These oversized humanoid rabbits had an absurd yet sinister plan to eliminate all human life and turn the entire world into a giant carrot field. Naruto and Bulma couldn't decide whether to laugh or take their goal seriously. However, it quickly became apparent that the rabbit people were quite serious and had advanced technology and laser-based weapons, much to Bulma's shock. Her initial surprise turned into fascination as she became intrigued by their alien technology and weapons. Poor Oolong nearly became a roasted pig by a laser beam fired by the rabbit people. Thankfully, Naruto was quick enough to save him. In the end, the trio left behind a giant mile-long crater with its bottom reaching deep into the earth. Naruto had unleashed a powerful ki blast to obliterate their underground base. He didn't know how deep the base was, so he made sure the blast radius was as wide as possible. Bulma pouted and glared at her boyfriend, angry that she couldn't get her hands on the alien tech because of him. And now, nearing the last Dragon Ball, the tension too was visible in the air, hoping not to face any problem. Bulma, her eyes glued to the radar, couldn't help but feel the excitement bubbling inside her. "It won't be long now, guys," she said, her voice slightly breathless. Her heart raced. "We're so close," she added, more to herself than anyone else. "One more, just one more, and my wish will come true," she thought, her mind already preparing herself for meeting her father. Naruto, seated beside her, smiled warmly. "Hee, Bulma, I can't believe we're almost there," he said, his gaze on her. "And it's all thanks to you. Your radar made this whole thing way easier." Bulma blushed slightly at his words but tried to play it off coolly. "Oh, come on, Naruto, don't give me all the credit. You're the one doing all the fighting and protecting," she said with a teasing smile. Without warning, she leaned in, wrapping her arms around his neck, and kissed him deeply. Naruto's eyes widened in surprise, but he quickly relaxed, savoring the moment. Their lips parted with a soft sigh, and for a second, everything else in the world disappeared. "Hey, what about me?" Oolong's voice broke the sweet moment, causing them both to glance his way. He was pouting, clearly feeling left out. "What, you want a kiss from me?" Naruto joked, causing Bulma to giggle beside him. Oolong made a puking sound. "No thanks, man, I don't swing that way," he smirked. Naruto blinked twice while Bulma giggled again. It was the first time Oolong had come back at Naruto's jokes. Before Naruto could respond with his own comeback, his attention was caught by something in the distance. A massive structure loomed ahead. "Whoa, look at that!" Bulma exclaimed, her eyes wide as she took in the sight of the enormous palace standing tall before them. Naruto was equally awed. "It's huge," he marveled, trying to imagine how many people could live in such a place. "Not bad for a summer home." Oolong tried not to envy whoever owned that giant castle, though his tone betrayed a hint of jealousy. Unknown to the trio, they were already under watch, observed through hidden cameras scattered around the area. Inside the castle, Lord Pilaf, "They're here," Mai reported, her eyes locked on the monitor displaying the approaching trio. Her voice was calm, but her excitement was noticeable. Pilaf grinned, his small form leaning forward on his throne. "Is everything ready?" he asked eagerly, his eyes gleaming with ambition. Mai nodded. "Yes, my lord, everything is in place." "Perfect," Pilaf muttered, rubbing his hands together. "They have no idea what they're walking into." He let out a sinister laugh. "We'll capture them as planned. I'll activate the traps," Mai said before swiftly exiting the room. "Soon," Pilaf chuckled, his voice dripping with anticipation, "soon, they'll feel the wrath of Emperor Pilaf." His laughter echoed through the empty hall as he imagined his destined world domination. With the trio, Naruto, Bulma, and Oolong stood before the massive doors of the palace, staring up at the imposing door. Knocked several times and waited for someone to answer. "Doesn't look like anyone's home," Naruto said, glancing around. The place felt empty, the air heavy with a chilling sensation. "But the Dragon Ball is definitely inside," Bulma said, her eyes flicking down to the radar. "See, it's in there. Maybe nobody lives here. Naruto, see if you can pry open the door." She nodded toward the entrance. "All right, let's see," Naruto said, stepping forward. He placed his hands against the door and gave it a firm push. It groaned in protest before creaking open, revealing nothing but darkness beyond. "I have a bad feeling about this," Oolong muttered, his nerves on edge. Ignoring him, Naruto led the way inside, with Bulma and Oolong trailing behind. The moment they crossed the threshold, the temperature seemed to drop, and a thick, unsettling silence enveloped them. Bulma clung to Naruto's arm tightly. "Ugh, it's so dark in here," she whispered, her voice tinged with fear. "It'll be fine," Naruto assured her, though he couldn't shake the feeling that something was watching them. As they walked deeper into the castle, the silence became suffocating, broken only by their footsteps echoing against the stone walls. Then, out of nowhere, Oolong's ears perked up. "Wait, did you hear that?" he whispered, stopping in his tracks. Before anyone could respond, the sound of flapping wings filled the air, and suddenly, a swarm of bats descended on them from the ceiling. Bulma screamed in terror, instinctively jumping into Naruto's arms. "Get them off! Get them off!" she shrieked, her face buried in his chest. Naruto held her tightly, protecting her from the bats. "It's all right, they're just bats," he reassured her. After a few moments, the bats cleared, leaving the trio alone again. "You can get down now," Naruto said, gently setting Bulma back on her feet. She nodded, trembling slightly, but regained her composure. "I really don't like this place," Oolong muttered, casting a wary glance around the darkened corridor. Even the caves and dungeons they explored didn't give a haunted feeling that this place is radiating. They continued further into the castle, encountering a series of dangerous traps that made their journey inside even more deadly. Spiked walls, hidden pits, and sudden drop-offs all awaited them at every turn. But with Naruto's quick reflexes and sharp instincts, they managed to avoid any serious injuries and death. Finally, after what felt like hours, they stumbled upon a large, pink arrow pointing at a hallway. "It's pointing this way," Naruto said, cautiously following it. "But something doesn't feel right." Just as they reached the end of the corridor, a loud crash echoed through the hallway, another trap activated and the walls suddenly closed on them from every side. "We're trapped," Bulma cried out, her voice filled with panic. "I knew this was a bad idea," Oolong yelled. "Everyone, calm down," Naruto urged. "We just need to think. There's got to be a way out. My rise to power as this world's great king is close at hand." Pilaf watched his prisoners through the monitor, rubbing his hands together gleefully. His blue skin glowed in the dim light of his control room. "My lord, the Dragon Balls aren't inside the vehicle," Mai reported, her voice a mixture of confusion and nervousness. Pilaf's grin faltered. "Did you check the vehicle carefully?" Pilaf's voice rose, irritation bubbling up. Yes, Lord Pilaf. We searched everywhere. The Dragon Balls weren't in it. Mai's response only deepened Pilaf's disappointment. What? Pilaf banged the armrest of his chair. That means one of them must be carrying those. He started pacing, pondering their next move. They don't look like they have any balls. Shu muttered innocently. Pilaf glared at him, but before he could respond, Mai's eyes lit up as she stared at the screen, specifically at Naruto. I bet that hunk has all the balls. She licked her lips in a suggestive manner, completely distracted by Naruto's muscled form. Pilaf and Shu just exchanged uneasy looks at her comment. Guys, there's got to be a hidden button or switch that opens this wall, Naruto said, his eyes scanning the room. He wasn't one to back down from a challenge. Bulma and Oolong nodded, quickly looking around, but the darkness only made it a lot harder. Naruto, come here, I think I found something. Bulma called out, her voice laced with relief but also a hint of nervousness. She was standing in front of a panel that barely stood out in the dark room. It looks like a monitor, but I can't make out anything. Suddenly, the monitor flickered to life, lighting up the dark space. The face of a small blue imp appeared on the screen, grinning maniacally. Ha 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 ha. You fools. You've walked right into my trap, and now, you are all my prisoners. Escape is impossible. Pilaf's voice echoed ominously through the room, and his cackling sent a chill down Bulma's spine. Who are you? Naruto demanded, his fists clenched, ready for a fight. I am the great Emperor Pilaf. I know one of you has all 6 Dragon Balls. Hand them over, and I might let you go. Pilaf's eyes gleamed with a false promise, his smirk growing wider. As if we'd give you anything. Bulma snapped, her voice defiant, not wanting to give up her Dragon Balls. Pilaf's smug grin twisted into a scowl. You refuse. Then I'll have to make you talk. With a swift motion, he pressed a button on his control panel. A giant mechanical claw emerged from the wall, snatching Bulma up before anyone could react. She screamed, struggling as the claw lifted her off the ground. Bulma. Naruto rushed forward, but the wall slammed shut before he could reach her. What did you do to her? Give her back, Naruto shouted, his heart pounding in protective instincts, and he slammed his fist against the wall. Oh, don't worry, Pilaf taunted, I'm just bringing her here for some interrogation. Soon, you'll hear her screams. He laughed wickedly as the claw carried Bulma to him. Bulma was tossed in front of Pilaf, her body hitting the cold floor with a thud. She groaned, trying to get her bearings. You jerk, what are you planning to do to me? She demanded, fear laced into her voice despite her earlier bravado. Pilaf sneered, tell me where the Dragon Balls are, or I'll make you regret it. Bulma glared at him, her fear replaced by defiance again. I'll never tell you. She raised her middle finger at him, her eyes burning with anger. Pilaf's face turned beet red with fury. Oh, you want to be humiliated, do you? Fine. He let out a dark chuckle. Ha 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 ha. Pilaf, don't you dare touch her. Naruto's loud voice came through the speakers, filled with rage. He was ready to bring down this whole palace. Lord Pilaf, you're not actually going to use that, are you? Shu whimpered, stepping back nervously. Please don't. Mai, on the other hand, rolled her eyes. This is going to be embarrassing. Pilaf ignored them, slowly approaching Bulma with a sinister grin. She squeezed her eyes shut, bracing for the worst. Then, she felt nothing. She cautiously opened one eye. Pilaf blew her a flying kiss. Huh, a kiss. That's it. Bulma stared at him, dumbfounded. Yes, I threw a kiss. Pretty terrifying, right? Pilaf was blushing, awkwardly covering his mouth. Shu groaned, covering his face with his paws. Ew, how indecent. Mai hid her face but not for the same reason as Shu but for how childish those two were acting. That's the best you can do. Bulma tried to hold her laugh but failed, her giggles filling the room. Pilaf was shocked. What? He sputtered, his face turned into disbelief. How dare you mock my most terrifying attack? Naruto's laughter echoed through the speakers. Man, I thought you were actually going to torture her. Ha ha ha. Oolong rolling on the floor while laughing his off. Pilaf's face turned red again, this time with embarrassment. That does it, he shrieked and slammed a lever. The giant claw returned, roughly tossing Bulma back to Naruto's arms. She landed in his arms, still dazed from the sudden movement. Bulma, are you okay? Naruto asked, his face filled with concern as he gently held her. I'm fine, she muttered, though she still felt a little dizzy. Her cheeks flushed slightly from being in Naruto's strong arms. Damn it, I can't believe my attack didn't work. Pilaf pouted like a child denied candy. Lord Pilaf, maybe we should use the sleeping gas, Mai suggested, unimpressed with his antics. Once they're out cold, we can just take the Dragon Balls ourselves. Pilaf perked up. Oh, that's right, sleeping gas. Brilliant idea, Mai, do it. Shu scrambled to push the button, and soon, thick clouds of gas began filling the room where Naruto, Bulma, and Oolong were held. The trio started coughing as the gas enveloped them. What is this? Naruto struggled to speak, his eyelids growing heavy. His body swayed, fighting the drowsiness. It's sleeping gas, Oolong warned, his voice faint. Don't breathe. But it was already too late. The trio collapsed, unconscious on the floor. The gas cleared away, and the walls lifted. Pilaf strutted into the room, his face filled with triumph. Ha ha ha, fast asleep, just like babies. He sneered. Now, let's find those Dragon Balls. Mai quickly began searching through Naruto's belongings. Her hand slipped into a bag and, with a triumphant grin, pulled out all 6 Dragon Balls. Here they are, Lord Pilaf. We can summon the dragon now. Pilaf couldn't hold back his happiness, his chest heaved up and down as he started to breathe heavily, and suddenly everything went blank. A few hours later, the dim glow of the castle's lights flickered as Mai and Shu frantically tried to wake up their master lying on his bed. Lord Pilaf, wake up. Mai called, shaking him gently. Shu hovered nearby, concerned looking at his face. Lord Pilaf, are you all right? Shu asked as Pilaf slowly stirred, his eyes slowly opened. Everything was blurry at first, but gradually, Pilaf's vision cleared. His eyes darted around the room, his confusion evident. What happened? He mumbled. How did I fall asleep? The last thing I remember is getting all the Dragon Balls. Mai cleared her throat, trying to suppress a smile. You were so excited and happy that you fainted, my lord, she explained. It seems the thrill was a bit too much for you. I fainted. Me? Pilaf asked in disbelief, sitting up straighter. Both Mai and Shu nodded, trying not to laugh. But, did you secure the Dragon Balls? He asked, his voice rising in panic. Mai gestured to a box sitting on a nearby table. Yes, my lord, we have all the Dragon Balls right here, she assured him. Pilaf's eyes widened with joy, his heart pounding as he practically leapt out of bed. Let me see them, he demanded. Mai opened the box with a dramatic motion, revealing the 7 glowing orbs. There, see for yourself, she said, watching Pilaf's expression of awe. Ha 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 ha. Pilaf's laugh echoed through the room. They're all mine. Finally, I have them all. His laughter continued, and Mai and Shu joined in, though their giggles were a bit more reserved. Suddenly, Pilaf stopped laughing and turned to Mai. What time is it? He asked, his voice sharp. It's 3 a.m., Lord Pilaf, Mai replied, slightly puzzled by the question. Perfect. Pilaf grinned sinisterly. Let's go outside. I'm going to summon the dragon right now. My rise to power as the ruler of the world is at hand. His voice was filled with glee as he imagined sitting on the top of the world as its new ruler. Mai and Shu quickly fell into line behind him. As you wish, my lord, they said in unison. But first, Pilaf paused, what about our prisoners? They're still in the dungeon, fast asleep from the gas, Mai replied. Good, let's leave them there for now. Pilaf nodded and then motioned for Shu to carry the box. Shu eagerly grabbed the box and balanced it on his head as they made their way outside. In the dungeon, Bulma stirred awake, her head pounding from the effects of the sleeping gas. As her vision focused, panic set in. She looked around frantically and saw Naruto and Oolong still asleep beside her. But her heart skipped when her eyes landed on Naruto's bag, completely empty. The Dragon Balls, she gasped, her voice rising in a crescendo of horror. They're gone. Ah! Bulma screamed, causing Naruto and Oolong to jerk awake. Naruto, get up, get up. Bulma shook Naruto roughly, her panicked nerve getting out of control. They took the Dragon Balls. Huh? What? Naruto mumbled groggily as he rubbed his eyes. Oolong sat up, his ears still ringing from Bulma's shouting. They gassed us, Naruto. And now the Dragon Balls are gone. Bulma yelled, her voice cracking with frustration. No way. Naruto's eyes widened as he quickly checked the bag himself. They really took them. Bulma's voice wavered with despair. They could be summoning the dragon as we speak. What if they've already made their wish? Her eyes began to well up with tears. Darn it, we're too late. Naruto clenched his fists, his knuckles turning white. Not if we can stop them, he said, determination blazing in his eyes. Hey, guys, look. Oolong interrupted, pointing toward the cell door. The door, it's open. Both Naruto and Bulma turned their heads toward the door, and a surprised look appeared on their faces. Do you think they just forgot to lock it? Naruto asked, suspicion creeping into his voice. Bulma bit her lip, trying to make sense of it. It could be a mistake, or maybe another trap. Why would they bother trapping us again if we're already in a cell? Oolong snorted. They're probably just idiots. Bulma wiped her eyes, regaining her composure. If the door's open, we still have a chance to get the Dragon Balls back. She stood up, her resolve firm. Naruto nodded, standing up beside her. All right, let's do this. Without hesitation, the trio left the cell, stepping cautiously into the dark, and running through the corridors of Pilaf's castle. The walls stood high, casting ghostly shadows that made the place feel like an endless maze. This place is like a labyrinth, Bulma muttered as they hurried through the halls. We need to find those Dragon Balls before it's too late. Naruto glanced around, his senses heightened. Hang on, guys, I sense something. Suddenly, his senses flared, warning him of an approaching power. It made the Saiyan freeze for a moment, but he quickly realized it must be the dragon being summoned. They are summoning the dragon right now, he said, his words surprising both Bulma and Oolong. Before they could say anything, the reddish-brown-haired Saiyan scooped Bulma into his arms. Oolong, grab my leg right now, he instructed. The pig complied, and in a swift motion, Naruto flew, breaking through the castle's large window. The screams of Bulma and the pigmen echoed as they held onto Naruto tightly. The cold desert air brushed against Pilaf's face as he stood far outside his castle, gazing up at the full moon with anticipation. The world was within his grasp, and nothing could stop him now. The stars twinkled down as if they were celebrating his dream coming true. He turned to Shu and Mai, his eyes gleaming with excitement. My hour of glory is finally at hand, Pilaf proclaimed, his voice growing louder with every word. This world will finally fall under my control, ha-ha-ha-ha-ha-ha. His laugh echoed through the empty Shu and Mai exchanged a glance, swallowing their fear as they nervously laughed along. Yes, my lord, Shu squeaked, his knees trembling. Mai, trying to hold it together, gave a firm nod but couldn't hide the slight shake in her hands. Quickly, put those balls on the ground, Pilaf ordered, his voice booming with authority. Yes, my lord, Shu responded immediately, carefully placing all the dragon balls out of the box on the ground, his heart pounding in his chest. Pilaf stared down at the glowing orbs, his eyes wide with madness. Finally, I'm going to summon the dragon and make my wish. He raised his hands dramatically. Mai and Shu gulped as a shiver of dread ran down their spines. They were part of something bigger than themselves now, something magnificent. Come forth, dragon, and grant my wish, Pilaf screamed, thrusting his arms toward the heavens. The dragon balls erupted in a brilliant glow, lighting up the entire area. Pitch-black clouds appeared, covering the whole star-filled sky into darkness as if the heavens themselves cowered in fear of the dragon. Thunder rumbled ominously, and in a flash of lightning, a beam shot out from the balls, piercing the sky. A massive green dragon emerged, coiling into the air, its size dwarfing the entire landscape. Shenron appeared, a towering, serpentine figure with glowing red eyes that burned with unparalleled otherworldly power. His scales shimmered, and his voice boomed, I am Shenron. Are you the one who summoned me? Pilaf, wide-eyed, took a step back. His bravado cracked for a moment, replaced by raw fear. Why yes, I did, he stammered, trying to keep his composure, but the weight of Shenron's presence was crushing. Tell me your wish, I shall grant you any 2 wishes. But beware, for they will come true, Shenron's voice echoed like thunder. Pilaf, even though he was shaking in his boots, could barely contain his excitement. His mind was filled with visions of power, of ruling the world, and making everyone bow before him. But before he could even open his mouth to speak, a gust of wind swept past him. Stop right there. Naruto landed before Pilaf with Bulma in his arms and Oolong clinging to his leg. The trio's sudden appearance made Pilaf's heart skip a beat. Oolong quickly released Naruto's leg and backed away, his eyes wide as he took in the sight of Shenron looming above them all. You're supposed to be in the dungeon. Pilaf's voice shook with panic, his earlier confidence evaporating. Mai and Shu scrambled to his side, pulling out their guns with trembling hands. Shoot them down, now, Pilaf barked, trying to regain control. But Naruto was faster than lightning. In a blink of an eye, he disarmed both Mai and Shu, knocking them out cold without breaking a sweat. Pilaf stood there, stunned, watching his last line of defense fall apart like a house of cards. Now that's taken care of, Naruto said coolly, turning his attention to the blue imp and brushing him off as if swatting away an insect. Let's make our wish, Bulma. Bulma, still slightly awestruck by the dragon towering over them, nodded. Her eyes, however, were filled with hope as she looked up at Shenron. This was her chance, her one shot to bring her father back. But fear gnawed at her heart as well. Shenron's eyes glowed a fiery red as his voice boomed through the air. Tell me your first wish. Bulma stepped forward, her heart pounding in her chest. Shenron, please bring back my father from the dead. Her voice wavered slightly as she spoke, but her resolve was strong. The dragon stared at her, his eyes narrowing. I cannot grant your wish, Shenron boomed, his words were final. Bulma's heart sank into her stomach. What? But why? She cried, her voice breaking as her world crumbled around her. I cannot bring back those who have died from old age, sickness, or natural causes, Shenron explained, his voice cold and indifferent. Bulma fell to her knees, tears welling up in her eyes as sorrow and disappointment crashed over her. No, I was so close, she whispered, her voice barely audible. Naruto knelt beside her, pulling her into a comforting hug. "Bulma, don't cry," the Saiyan whispered. "I know you are feeling hurt. But think of your father. Somewhere in heaven he must be watching over you. Your father wouldn't want to see you like this, right? You're strong. You've always been strong." Bulma sniffled, wiping away her tears as she looked at Naruto's kind face. Her boyfriend was right. Her father passed away without any regrets, surrounded by his family. Really, what would he say if he saw his genius daughter crumbling like this so pitifully? "You're right. My dad wouldn't want me to fall apart like this," she said, her voice regaining some of its strength, even though the pain was still there. "He'd bonk me on the head for being a crybaby." Naruto smiled gently, holding her a little tighter, giving her strength. "That's the spirit," Naruto smiled, giving her a reassuring squeeze. "Now, come on, let's make this wish count." Bulma nodded, her heart still heavy, but her resolve was returning. She stepped back as Naruto took a deep breath and turned toward Shenron. "Shenron, I wish to know my origin and knowledge about the Saiyan race. Where I came from, why was I sent here?" Naruto's voice rang out with confidence. Oolong's eyes widened in confusion. "Wait, what? Naruto's not human," he muttered under his breath. Shenron's eyes glowed brighter as he locked his gaze on Naruto. "Your wish shall be granted." Suddenly, a beam of light shot from Shenron's eyes, hitting Naruto square in the forehead. Naruto gasped and fell on his knees as pain exploded in his head. It felt like his mind was being torn apart, so much information and knowledge flooding in all at once. He clutched his head, his body trembling in shock. "Naruto!" Bulma cried, rushing to his side. "Are you okay? What's happening?" But Naruto couldn't answer. His mind was overwhelmed. Visions of his race's past, the history of his race, of the mighty Saiyans pouring into him. He saw planets burning, mighty warriors soaring through the stars, and a legacy of power that stretched across the stars. After what felt like an eternity, the pain began to fade, and Naruto slowly opened his eyes. I know why I was sent here," he whispered, his voice filled with awe and disbelief. With Bulma's help, he stood up, still oriented and dizzy from before. But slowly recovered his senses. "Your wish has been granted," Shenron declared. "Now tell me your second wish." Naruto glanced at Bulma and then at Oolong. "Well, we don't need anything else. Oolong, why don't you take the second wish?" Oolong's eyes lit up in excitement. "Really, I can wish for anything." Naruto and Bulma both nodded. Oolong, overcome with excitement, as he started to dream about girls in sexy panties and blurted out without thinking, "I wish for, and most comfortable girls' panties." The moment the words left his mouth, Oolong realized his mistake. "Wait, no, I didn't mean." Too late. Shenron's eyes flashed red as he granted the wish. A pair of skimpy white panties floated down from the sky, landing squarely on Oolong's head. Naruto and Bulma both facepalmed in unison. "Your wish has been granted. Fare thee well." Shenron's voice rumbled as he began to glow once again, and in a flash, the dragon vanished. The dragon balls shot into the sky, scattering across the earth once more. Oolong stood there, the panties still on his head, utterly dumbfounded. "What just happened?" Naruto sighed, shaking his head. "Oolong, seriously." Bulma couldn't help but laugh through her tears. "Well, at least that blue imp wish to rule the world didn't happen," she said, wiping her eyes as she tried to find the silver lining. Naruto grinned. "Yeah, that's one win in the books." Oolong let out a loud, comical wail as he looked at the pair of panties in his hands. "Ooh man, I missed my chance to get a harem," he cried, shaking his fists at the sky in frustration, cursing himself for his blunder. Naruto raised an eyebrow and chuckled. "Well, don't lose hope, you perverted pig. You can always collect the Dragon Balls again and make your wish next time," he said in a light-hearted tone. Oolong's ears perked up, but Bulma quickly dashed his hopes. There's no collecting any Dragon Balls for a while, she said, crossing her arms. Oolong's face looked confused. Huh, why not? Bulma sighed. Apparently, after wishes are granted, it takes a full year for the Dragon Balls to turn back into, well, Dragon Balls again. Right now, they're just a bunch of ordinary stones. My radar can't even detect them. A year. Oolong's face turned pale. Darn my rotten mouth. I could have had a whole harem, but instead. He trailed off, holding up the panties in his hand. At least these panties are comfy. Not a total loss, he muttered, half defeated, as he placed them on his head like a hat. What now? Do we all go our separate ways and wait for the Dragon Balls to come back? Bulma shrugged, glancing over at Naruto. Seems like that's the plan. Everyone does their own thing for a year, I guess. She paused and gave Naruto a soft smile. Hey, Naruto, why don't you come with me to my home? I'll introduce you to my mom. She's been dying to meet you since I told her all about you. She winked playfully, trying to lighten the mood. Naruto rubbed the back of his head with a grin. That sounds great, Bulma, but I need to meet my dad first. How about this? You and I go to my place first, then I'll take you to your city after that. His voice was sincere, and Bulma could feel Naruto might have unfinished business at home. After a moment of thought, she nodded. All right, sounds like a plan. Bulma smiled. Naruto turned to Oolong, extending his hand. I guess this is goodbye, for now, Oolong. Thanks for everything. There was genuine respect in Naruto's voice as they shook hands. Don't make it sound like we're never going to meet again. Oolong grinned, though his voice cracked with emotion. I'll be around, and don't forget about me when you're out there kicking butt. Bulma stepped up to Oolong, her tone a bit softer. We won't forget you, Oolong. If you need the Dragon Radar or anything else, just give me a call, all right? Oolong nodded, his heart warming a little. Thanks, guys. He hesitated before asking sheepishly, can I keep the mobile home? Naruto laughed. Sure. We don't need it. I can just fly us to Bulma's place. Without warning, Naruto scooped Bulma up into his arms, holding her in a bridal style that made her blush slightly. Oolong gave them a small wave as Naruto took off, flying into the sky with Bulma nestled in his arms. See you around, Oolong. They both shouted as they soared away into the horizon. Oolong watched them disappear, a mix of emotions swirling inside him. Yeah, see you soon, guys, he whispered to himself before heading off, feeling a strange sense of pride at being part of their adventure, even if his wish had gone horribly wrong. Hours later, the sun had risen, casting a golden glow over the land. Pilaf, Mai, and Shu stirred from unconsciousness, their bodies aching from the swift defeat Naruto had dealt them. Groaning, Pilaf slowly sat up, rubbing his head as he looked around. What happened? Where is the dragon? Pilaf's voice was filled with panic as his eyes darted around the clearing, searching for any sign of Shenron or the Dragon Balls. Lord Pilaf, Mai said, her voice trembling as she stumbled to her feet. I think those three already made their wish. Pilaf's face twisted in pure despair as the realization hit him. His eyes widened, and a painful scream tore from his throat. What? No. He stood up shakily, fists clenched at his sides as he looked up at the now clear, calm sky. My dream. I was so close. So close. His voice cracked, and he fell to his knees, slamming his fists into the ground. How could this happen? I was supposed to rule the world. Tears welled up in his eyes as he trembled with rage and sorrow. Mai and Shu exchanged nervous glances, unsure of how to console their devastated leader. We can always try again next year, Lord Pilaf, Shu offered meekly, though the suggestion seemed to fall on deaf ears. I don't want next year. Pilaf screamed, pounding the ground again. I want the world to kneel before me now. Mai sighed quietly, patting Pilaf on the shoulder, though she knew there was little they could do now. We'll try again, Lord Pilaf. Next time, we'll be ready. We'll have another plan. Pilaf sniffled, his pride shattered, but somewhere in the depths of his failure, a little determination remained. Yes, he muttered, yes, we will, and when that time comes, the world will tremble before Emperor Pilaf. Mai and Shu looked at each other, offering silent nods of support. This setback wasn't the end. Pilaf's quest for power wasn't over, not by a long shot. As Naruto and Bulma soared through the sky, the vibrant green islands below caught Bulma's attention. The beauty of the landscape was breathtaking, filled with lush trees and wildlife that seemed to thrive in the sunlight. She marveled at the view. Hey, Naruto, when do you think we'll reach your house? Soon. Naruto pointed at the islands below. Bulma, look, those islands belong to my dad. His voice brimmed with nostalgia as he recalled the memories. I used to train there with him all the time. Wow, they look amazing. Bulma exclaimed, her eyes sparkling with curiosity. So, what's your dad like? Naruto chuckled, scratching the back of his head. Oh, he's a nice guy, super strong, too, but he's also a bit of a pervert. Like you, Bulma teased, raising an eyebrow. Naruto laughed heartily. No way, he's way worse than I am. He winked, then playfully warned, just be careful around him, he might try to grope you. Bulma rolled her eyes, but a smile crept onto her face. Great, I'll keep that in mind. Suddenly, Naruto's expression brightened. Look, it's my house. See, he pointed down, and Bulma could see a quaint little home nestled on a small island surrounded by palm trees. Wow, it's so cute. Bulma complimented as Naruto descended and gently set her down on the ground. As she straightened her clothes and took a deep breath, ready to meet his dad, Naruto shouted, Hey, Dad. I'm back. They stepped inside the house, and what they found left Bulma wide-eyed. Master Roshi was glued to the TV screen, seemingly oblivious to their entrance as he watched porn. Those scenes playing on the screen told it was a rather inappropriate film even for porn. See, I told you, Naruto said, shaking his head with an amused grin. Bulma turned her gaze away from the screen, her cheeks flushed. Hey, old man, I'm back, Naruto shouted again, a playful edge to his voice. Roshi freaked out, scrambling to turn off the screen. When he finally registered that Naruto was home, his eyes widened in surprise. My boy, you're back. He rushed over and enveloped Naruto in a bear hug, lifting him off the ground. Bulma was a little surprised seeing the old man's strength, despite looking so old. Naruto chuckled as he returned the embrace. Good to see you, Dad. Why are you back so early? Roshi asked, tilting his head in confusion. Not that I mind. Don't tell me you gave up already. I'm done hunting for the Dragon Balls, Dad. I got my wish granted. Naruto declared, watching as his father's expression shifted from confusion to shock. Really? And you brought someone with you? Roshi's eyes darted over to Bulma. Naruto nodded, gesturing towards her. This is Bulma. It's nice to meet you, Master Roshi. My name is Bulma, she introduced herself, giving a polite bow. Roshi nodded, a wide grin spreading across his face as he eyed Bulma appreciatively. Oh, so this is the famous Bulma I've heard about. She's quite beautiful. His tone shifted slightly, a mischievous glimmer in his eye. So, she's your girlfriend? He teased his son. Naruto dropped the bomb, his voice filled with excitement. Yeah, she is. Roshi's jaw dropped, and his eyes sparkled with excitement. My boy, I've never felt prouder of you. He exclaimed, letting out a perverted giggle. You totally scored a hot babe at your age. Even though I didn't get a girlfriend until much later. Knock it off, old man. Naruto laughed, shaking his head in embarrassment, but he couldn't hide the proud smile on his face. Come, sit down, Roshi urged, gesturing towards the sofa. I'll get us some drinks. He disappeared into the kitchen, leaving Naruto and Bulma to exchange glances. That's your dad. He seems nice, Bulma said as she settled into the sofa. After a few moments, Roshi returned with 3 glasses of cola, handing one to each of them. They chatted comfortably, getting to know one another. Bulma told Roshi about herself and how she had met Naruto during their adventures. The more she spoke, the more intrigued Roshi became, especially when he learned that Bulma was the owner of Capsule Corp despite being so young, the world's largest company. Wow, I'm impressed, Roshi exclaimed, leaning forward with enthusiasm. I have only heard about your geniuses on the TV, but you must be quite the businesswoman too. Thanks, Master Roshi, but I am less a businesswoman and more of a genius scientist and inventor. It's been quite a journey to the top, to say the least, Bulma replied, feeling a swell of pride. After sharing stories, Roshi's curiosity got the best of him. So, what was your wish, Naruto? Naruto's expression turned serious as he recounted his encounter with the dragon. I wished for the knowledge of my Saiyan race, but honestly, it's a lot to take in. I can barely remember all of it. Bulma leaned in, her eyes sparkling with curiosity. Can you tell us more about Saiyans? I really want to know about them. Naruto nodded, sensing the interest in her voice. Sure. Saiyans are an endangered race of sapient humanoids, known for being incredibly aggressive warriors. We're one of the strongest species in the universe. He paused, remembering the past. We look a lot like humans, except we have monkey-like tails and muscular builds. Our hair is usually spiky, too. Endangered. Are you telling me you're the last one of your race? Roshi asked, concern appearing on his face. Naruto sighed, as he recalled the knowledge the dragon gave him. I'm afraid so. A frost demon named Frieza wiped out the Saiyan race along with our planet. That's horrible, Bulma gasped, her eyes wide with horror. How can someone do something so cruel? Roshi nodded solemnly, feeling a chill at the thought of such evil existing in the universe. It's terrifying to think that someone so powerful and cruel could exist. Yeah, Naruto replied, his gaze turning distant as he recalled the memories of his lost people. But I've got to keep moving forward, for their sake. Roshi gave a silent seldom look to his son. He knew what he meant, but he knew his son was stronger than that. Roshi leaned forward, his curiosity piqued. Can you tell us more about your race, Naruto? I want to hear everything. Bulma too was curious. Naruto took a deep breath, trying to gather his thoughts, the flood of Saiyan history swirling in his mind. He looked at Bulma and Roshi, their expressions a mix of curiosity and concern, and continued, First, I have to warn you, I don't know everything right now. I should have asked the dragon to give me the information slowly. Years of history just crashed into my mind all at once, so it's hard to remember everything clearly. But here's what I do know about the Saiyans. He shifted in his seat, his tone becoming more serious. The Saiyans originated from a planet called Sadala in the Cilia galaxy. They were a group of barbaric aliens, living on the outskirts of the Tuffles' advanced cities. The Tuffles, who were very technologically advanced, had migrated from their own dying planet. When they arrived in Sadala, they built a thriving civilization, while the Saiyans lived in the wastelands. Naruto's eyes darkened as he recounted the grim history. Because the Saiyans were less intelligent and primitive compared to the Tuffles, they were hunted like animals. Bulma gasped, her hand covering her mouth in shock. That's terrible. How could they let that happen? Naruto continued, his voice steady but tinged with sadness. But the Tuffles had no idea that the Saiyans, despite their lack of technology, would eventually take the whole planet for themselves and annihilate their race. About 80,000 years ago, a war broke out. The Saiyans tried many times to overthrow the Tuffles, but they were outnumbered and outgunned. The Tuffles had advanced technology and advanced weaponry to keep them at bay. Then one night, everything changed. The Saiyans transformed into Uzaru under the light of the full moon, gaining incredible power from the Blutz waves that only came once every 100 years from the planet's biggest moon. With this new strength, they finally annihilated the Tuffles. Roshi leaned forward, his eyes wide. That's brutal, but the Tuffles faced their karma. But then what happened? Naruto took a moment to collect his thoughts. After their victory, the Saiyans didn't know how to expand beyond Sadala. They didn't have the technology to build spaceships. Their desire for conquest was put on hold until the Arcosians arrived. They formed an alliance with the Saiyans, promising to share their technology in exchange for the Saiyans' help in conquering other planets. Bulma's brow furrowed as she absorbed the information. And that's when they started to become more advanced. Not exactly. Over time, the Saiyans learned to use the Tuffles' advanced technology and became a little smarter, though their lust for fighting and destruction didn't go away. They became known as one of the strongest races in the Cilia galaxy and were feared for their ability to recover and grow stronger after major injuries. Naruto paused, letting the gravity of the Saiyan legacy settle in. They began conquering planets for resources or simply destroying them for fun. But 50,000 years after the Great War, planet Sadala was destroyed. Bulma's eyes widened in disbelief. What? How did that happen, Naruto? He looked down for a moment, gathering his thoughts. Sadala was destroyed because of internal conflict among the Saiyans. When they grew so arrogant that they severed ties with both old and new allies. For generations, the Saiyans continued their rampage, conquering worlds and destroying anything that stood in their way, all to prove their strength. And everyone saw them as nothing more than savage beasts. Bulma frowned, her brow furrowed in empathy. It sounds like a tragic cycle of violence. But what changed? Didn't anyone try to stop them? Naruto nodded, encouraged by her interest. Eventually, a group of the strongest Saiyans rebelled against the king and the royal family. They gathered about a third of the Saiyan population, advocating for a change in their ways. They believed that their power should be used for good, to help those who couldn't defend themselves. Their goal was to change the way the universe viewed the Saiyans, and they knew that the only way to do that was to overthrow the corrupt regime. A great civil war broke out among the Saiyans. Bulma felt a shiver run down her spine. Wow, it's hard to believe that such a powerful race could fall apart like that, Bulma said, her eyes widening with fascination. Roshi shook his head, a solemn expression on his face. It's a reminder that strength alone isn't enough. Without wisdom and unity, even the mightiest can fall. It's like a classic battle between good and evil. So, which side won? Did the good Saiyans triumph? Naruto chuckled softly at her enthusiasm but shook his head. The sad truth is, neither side won the war. It was so intense that both factions ultimately destroyed each other, along with the planet itself. But the evil king was cunning enough to send his offspring and a few hundred loyal Saiyans to another planet in a different galaxy. That planet became known as Planet Vegeta. Roshi raised an eyebrow, intrigued. And what happened to the Saiyans after that? Naruto leaned back, his expression growing somber. Well, here's the twist. Despite having advanced technology and the knowledge to use it, the Saiyans never bothered to educate themselves or learn about the universe. They remained barbarians in every sense. Even after being freed from the Tuffles, they didn't evolve. For 50,000 years, they were stuck in their primal ways. Bulma gasped in shock. You mean to tell me that after all that time, they never thought to pursue knowledge or science? That they could have risen to new heights? No, Naruto replied, his voice heavy with regret. They were known as savage barbarians and wild animals of the universe. At that time, Saiyans were 15 to 20 feet tall, looking like cave people, their intellect buried under their brute strength. All the technology they used to expand across the galaxy was either given or stolen from others. Bulma's eyes were wide with disbelief. That's insane. So, what happened to them? When planet Sadala was destroyed, everyone in the Cilia galaxy thought the Saiyans were gone for good. Every planet they conquered was freed, and any records of their history were mostly erased. On planet Vegeta, the surviving Saiyans were stranded. They had no idea how to rebuild their society or create new technology. Slowly, they fell into a sort of stone age. Naruto smiled as he continued. But just like humans, they evolved. Their bodies became smaller, and their brains grew larger, allowing them to think critically and come up with original ideas. They built a new society and culture, entirely different from what they had before. Really? Bulma asked, her interest piqued. So they changed. Exactly. Over the next 20,000 years, the Saiyans developed into a completely different species. They built a great civilization and advanced technology of their own. By then, they looked very similar to humans, no longer the savage barbarians they once were. The only remnants of their past were their monkey-like tails and strong builds, along with their ability to transform into Uzaru. Bulma smiled, a mix of admiration and relief on her face. That's amazing. So they learned from their mistakes and adapted. Naruto nodded, feeling a swell of pride. Yes, and with their newfound intelligence and technology, they began to explore and conquer other planets in their new galaxy. They finally started to carve out a legacy that wasn't just about destruction. But they were more advanced and, importantly, smarter. They still believed in strength, but now they also acknowledged the power of knowledge and its benefits. Bulma listened intently, her eyes widening. What about their history? Did they remember anything about their past? Naruto continued. They forgot everything about planet Sadala and the savage lives they once led. The only history they held was about their battles with the Tuffles and the civil war that ultimately led to their planet's destruction. They didn't know they used to be savage barbarians of space. To them, their true origins and powers became myths and fairy tales. Roshi interjected, but they still had a royal family, right? Yes, Naruto replied. Despite being just a shadow of their former selves, the new Saiyans had a royal family that ruled them. In just 2,000 years, they regained lost conquered worlds and rebuilt their reputation across the universe. They became known as a race of the strongest warriors again. Bulma's curiosity was piqued. And then what happened? Naruto sighed, his expression growing serious. Their resurgence caught the attention of a powerful being, a frost demon named King Cold, the conqueror of many galaxies. King Cold sought to add the Saiyans to his army, but they were proud and fought back. Unfortunately, they were no match for him, and nearly got wiped out in the battle. Ultimately, they admitted defeat and were absorbed into King Cold's empire, forced to serve as soldiers in his military. And then, Bulma urged, leaning in closer. After 3,000 years of ruling the empire, King Cold retired and passed his empire to his son, Frieza, Naruto concluded, his voice heavy with history. Roshi's brow furrowed in confusion. But why did Frieza kill your race, son? The Saiyans were powerful beings. Eradicating them seems like a foolish decision. Wouldn't that weaken his own army? Bulma nodded, agreeing with Roshi. It doesn't make sense. Why kill such a strong part of your military? Naruto thought hard, frustration building as he searched for an answer. I don't know. Either the dragon didn't provide me with this information, or I just can't remember it right now. Both Roshi and Bulma sensed the tension in the air and decided not to press further. Instead, Bulma shifted the conversation. So how did you end up on Earth? The only thing I know for sure, Naruto began, his voice quivering slightly, is that I was born with a high power level, even though I was a low-class Saiyan. The royal family didn't like the idea of low-class Saiyans being strong. They would kill any Saiyan child born strong without royal ties. My parents must have sent me here for my own safety. His voice cracked as he continued. They promised to come for me afterward, but I guess they were killed along with the rest of the Saiyan race. Tears welled in his eyes, and he struggled to hold them back. Seeing her boyfriend in such an emotional state, Bulma immediately wrapped her arms around him, pulling him into a comforting embrace. "I'm so sorry, Naruto," she whispered, her voice soothing. "You're not alone anymore. You have me. You have us." Roshi watched the young couple with a smile, feeling the warmth spread through him. It made him happy to see his son cared for in such a way. He may not have been great at emotional moments, but he wanted to offer Naruto some guidance. "Naruto, no matter what, Earth will always be your home," he said softly. "Live on. Not just for yourself, but for your parents as well. Make them proud by living your life to the fullest." As they continued to talk, Naruto felt a warm sense of belonging wash over him. Surrounded by Bulma and his father, he realized again he had a family that would support him in his journey ahead. After sharing these heartfelt moments, the trio glanced at the clock and realized it was already noon. "We should eat, I'm starving," Bulma exclaimed, trying to lighten the mood. "Yeah, let's do that," Naruto agreed, grateful for the shift in conversation. Roshi went to the kitchen to get some food for the night, giving the young couple some space. Naruto decided to show Bulma his space pod. When they reached it, Bulma gasped, her eyes sparkling with excitement. "Wow, this is incredible. The technology is so advanced. Can I study it?" Naruto grinned, his heart swelling with pride. "Of course, I'd love to share it with you." Overcome with joy, Bulma squealed like a little girl and kissed Naruto on the lips. The kiss was sweet and filled with love. As they pulled away, Bulma's face was flushed with excitement. "Thank you, Naruto. This is going to be so much fun." Naruto chuckled, feeling lighter. "I'm glad you're excited. It's just the beginning." Soon the three of them settled down to eat, the earlier emotions now replaced with laughter and warmth. That night, in the soft glow of the moonlight filtering through the curtains, Naruto and Bulma lay together in his bed, their bodies intertwined under the covers. Bulma shifted slightly, looking up at Naruto with a playful glint in her eyes. "So, Naruto, you're basically the last of your race. Have you thought about how you might repopulate your kind?" she asked, her tone teasing. Naruto chuckled, running a hand through his spiky hair. "I didn't really think about that," he admitted. "Besides, I'm like 14, he added with a laugh. Bulma giggled at his response, her laughter brightening the dim room. "I forget sometimes that you're younger than me," she said, her voice softening. "But if you ever want to repopulate your race, you'll have to marry multiple women." "Yeah, that's every guy's dream," Naruto joked, a hint of blush creeping onto his cheeks. "But don't worry, I have you, and that's all I need." Bulma smirked, her playful side coming to the forefront. "What if I told you I'd be okay with you having multiple women?" Naruto turned serious for a moment, meeting her gaze with a hint of concern. "Bulma, we just started our relationship. Let's not get ahead of ourselves. Even if I did have multiple women, you would always be my favorite," he said, his voice sincere as he hugged her tightly. Bulma melted into his embrace, resting her head on his chest, feeling the steady rhythm of his heartbeat beneath her ear. "You're sweet, Naruto," she murmured, feeling warmth radiate from his body. "But I'd like to think I could be your only one, at least for now." A shiver ran down Naruto's spine as he finally let himself get lost in the moment, closing the distance between them. Their lips met in a soft, warm kiss that quickly ignited into something deeper, more passionate. The world outside faded away as they explored the warmth and sweetness of each other's arms.